taxpayers lost billions. Attorney General Ellison has likewise claimed his office was aggressively holding fraudsters accountable, but when his statements were tested against the record, they fell apart. In the Feeding Our Future case, Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison publicly suggested that courts forced the state to continue payments. The judges in that case took the extraordinary step of publicly correcting them. The truth is the state made a choice once again to keep sending the money out the door. The Feeding Our Future scandal alone involved nearly $300 million stolen from programs meant to feed children during the pandemic. We're talking about fake invoices, meals that never existed, luxury cars, and overseas investments, all paid by the American taxpayer. Today, dozens have been convicted. The fraud was real, the warning signs were obvious, and state leadership failed to act. The same pattern repeats across Minnesota's social services system. In the Child Care Assistance Program, providers racked up dozens and in some cases more than 100 violations and still collected millions. Facilities shut down and reopened the same day under new names at the same address. This went on for years. Housing Stabilization Services, a program expected to cost $2.6 million annually, exploded to over $100 million a year. Federal prosecutors have described it as, and I quote, easy money. Providers billed services never delivered while the Walz administration failed to intervene until federal agents showed up. And when state employees tried to stop this, they were silenced and retaliated against for even daring to notice the fraud. We have spoken with over 30 whistleblowers, many of them current employees and Democrats, who say they were ignored, retaliated against, and even surveilled for raising concerns. Instead of protecting the whistleblowers, the Walz administration protected the system that enabled the fraud. We are taking oversight of fraud seriously, and today I hope the Democrats will do the same, but their track record is not promising. We followed up with the whistleblowers when state leaders ignored them. Republican staff spent 36 hours and 46 minutes in 9 transcribed interviews with current and former Minnesota state officials. Democrats, however, only asked 3 hours and 14 minutes worth of questions. That's inexcusable and frankly embarrassing. Taxpayers deserve better. We are working with the Trump administration, which is taking a whole-of-government approach to stop fraud before money is stolen. What we've uncovered in Minnesota is not a paperwork error or a few bad actors slipping through the cracks. It is sustained failure of leadership. Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison were warned repeatedly. Auditors raised red flags. Employees sounded alarms. Invoices didn't make sense. And still, the money kept flowing. While state officials hesitated, billions of taxpayer dollars were stolen from programs meant to serve children, the disabled, and families in crisis. While whistleblowers were silenced, fraudsters got rich. Accountability shouldn't begin only after federal prosecutors step in and clean up the damage. Accountability should compel leaders to act, and here they did not. Today, this committee expects answers, and we expect an explanation for why it took federal law enforcement, not state leadership, to finally turn off the spigot. Before we proceed, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter the committee's interim staff report titled, "The Cost of Doing Nothing, How Tim Walz and Keith Ellison Fueled Minnesota's Fraud Explosion," into the record. Without objection, so ordered. And with that, I now yield to Ranking Member Garcia for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Kilmer. I want to thank, of course, the governor for being here today, the Attorney General as well, and to Reverend Mariah Tolgard. Thank you so much for being here. I especially, though, want to thank the Minnesotans that I know have traveled here to be with us today to witness this hearing, but also in solidarity of the horrors and terrors that are happening, not just in Minnesota, but that have happened across the country. Now, we look forward to hearing directly on what life in Minnesota has been like thanks to the Trump administration's actions. And the truth is that Donald Trump and Republicans have cut billions of dollars from health care and food assistance. That is a reality. Instead, with that money, they have used it to hire officers who are now terrorizing cities and killing Americans. That's where our taxpayer dollars have gone. We've taken from food assistance, we've taken from health care, and we superfunded terror on American streets. Now, Donald Trump has unleashed chaos against innocent Americans and across Minnesota, and we're going to talk about that today. Terror that has actually impacted real families and kids like Liam Ramos, who have been used, as we know, as bait. And we all know Liam's story really well. The reality is American citizens, innocent kids, people have been brutalized and ripped away from their families. They've been thrown into detention centers with horrible conditions that people are literally dying in these centers. Peaceful Americans have been killed by federal officers and agents and labeled them as domestic terrorists or assassins by their own government.
So, Matt.
Where is the hearing and the outrage for those actions? Now, Alex Preddy, as we all know, a VA nurse, was peacefully exercising his First and Second Amendment rights when he was pepper sprayed, tackled, disarmed, and then shot.
This has absolutely nothing to do with the fraud that's going on. So obviously that's what's going to happen throughout this entire hearing is Republicans are going to focus on the fraud. The Democrats are going to focus on ICE agents.
Repeatedly in the back. Renee Good, a mom who told an officer, and I quote, "I'm not mad at you," end quote, was shot dead just moments after. And this pattern of violence and lawlessness we've
This
seen,
guy's
of
going
course,
to lie
all over
about
the
what
country.
happened too.
Now, our committee and Democrats have documented over 590 cases of suspected misconduct by President Trump and Kristi Noem's immigration and enforcement agents across the country, not just in Minnesota. There's been 240 incidents of violence or concerning use of force, and 181 have involved United States citizens. Now, we've heard testimony that ICE's training has actually completely changed and now actually teaches our agents to violate the rights of American citizens. That's what we're teaching now to federal agents. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. DHS and ICE are out of control and must be held accountable by the Congress. Now, Oversight Democrats have been partnering to hold hearings to investigate these abuses, to hold DHS Secretary accountable, Stephen Miller, Greg Bovino. And make no mistake, this is Donald Trump's personal police and military force he is unleashing on American streets.
This guy's just grandstanding, and there's a lot of this stuff, obviously, in politics. But this guy Garcia, couldn't care less about anybody that gets a native-born American getting killed by an illegal. He wants the illegals, and his party wants the illegals to stay so they can get the votes from them.
Now, the hearing that we have today is going to build on those investigations. Operation Metro Surge, which we're going to hear a lot about today, this is really about not just what's happening in Minnesota through that operation, but the ways that President Trump has waged his own personal war on Minnesota. Instead of improving systems, of course, we're talking about fraud, according to our Republican colleagues. But instead of improving systems to prevent future fraud, Trump's also cut off $259 million in Medicaid funding to the state. He's threatened federal food aid for 600,000 Minnesotans, including 200,000 kids. President Trump has tried to use fraud as his excuse for all of this. But what's really happening is violence, terror, death, destruction, and ripping away services from those that need it. You don't fight fraud by issuing presidential pardons to fraudsters. You don't fight fraud from ripping away food assistance to kids. Now, since his reelection, Trump has also given out jail-free cards to dozens of actual real fraudsters who could get out of repaying their victims more than $1 billion. Where is the fraud hearing on those abuses? And we know that you just don't fight fraud by singling out states led by Democrats and ignoring states led by Republicans. Every single person here, and I know the governor and the attorney general believe this as well, we all want to fight fraud, waste, and abuse in government. Oklahoma, by the way, and Alabama lead the nation in SNAP fraud. In Texas and Florida, a Russian citizen has been arrested for submitting billions of dollars in fraudulent claims and funneling millions overseas. Where are those hearings? Where's the governor of Oklahoma or Alabama or Texas or Florida? I also want to note this. Because of the Trump administration's illegal and unconstitutional actions, we know there is now 31 of 64 lawyers at the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office that have left. That is stunning. The lead attorney responsible for pursuing these fraud cases has left because the Trump administration ordered them, if we know, to investigate Renee Good's widow, not her killer. They were ordered to investigate Renee Good's widow, not her killer. If the president cared at all about fraud, we would not have all of these officers with all this illegal behavior on Minnesota streets. And we should remember that the Trump administration tried to use Operation Metro Surge as leverage to seize Minnesota's voter rolls. The Trump administration was never serious about addressing fraud in Minnesota. Instead, they've been interested in election conspiracy theories, in terrorizing kids.
They're going to find fraud. It's just going to take time, but they're going to find it.
And they've accused the governor and attorney general of covering up fraud only to investigate them and turn up actually no evidence. What they're trying to do is convince Americans that there's a good reason for violence, for killings, and for violations of the law. That's not acceptable, and we're not going to take that here today. I want to thank our witnesses again for being here, and I yield back.
Ranking member yields back. I'd like to welcome our witnesses. First, we have Tim Walz, governor of the state of Minnesota. Governor Walz first took office in January 2019. Next, we have Keith Ellison, Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. Attorney General Ellison also first took office in January 2019. Finally, we have Reverend Mariah Furnace Tolgard, Senior Pastor, Hamlin Church United Methodist. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we look forward to your testimony. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses answered the affirmative, and please take a seat. We appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statement, and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it's on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask that you please wrap up. I now recognize Governor Walz for his opening statement. Governor.
Thank you, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Garcia, members of the committee. I'm proud to be here today as the governor of the great state of Minnesota. Under my leadership, Minnesota has dedicated its resources to ensuring that all Minnesotans can live dignified and full lives with access to top-notch public schools, quality health care, good jobs. Thanks to these initiatives, Minnesota has been ranked as one of the best states to raise a family in, one of the best states to find a job in, and one of the best states to live in. Although Minnesota's programs have overwhelmingly achieved their intended purposes, they're not immune from fraud. I'll be the first to acknowledge that. But let me be clear. In Minnesota, if you defraud public programs, if you steal taxpayer money, we'll find you, we'll prosecute you, we'll convict you, and we'll throw you in jail. In this anti-fraud mission, we keep good company. Across the country, our nation's governors work hard every single day to combat fraud in their programs. But even as we confront issues similar to our sister states, the people of Minnesota have been singled out and targeted for political retribution at an unparalleled scale, including blocking Medicaid reimbursements to our state just last week. Under the guise of combating fraud, the federal government has flooded Minnesota with masked, untrained, and unaccountable agents who are wreaking havoc in our communities. On the streets of Minnesota, federal agents have entered U.S. citizens' homes who have committed no crimes. They have violated the constitutional rights of our citizens. They have ignored court orders. They have shot first and asked questions later. Time and again, they have gaslit us by demanding that we ignore what we see before our very eyes. But the American people are not so easily fooled. The image of this brutal campaigner seared into our collective memory. The fragile innocence of the 5-year-old boy in a bunny hat being led away from his family. The maddening cruelty of a barely clothed man, a U.S. citizen, being dragged from his house in the dead of winter. The sheer devastation we feel of seeing the lifeless bodies of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Long after the federal government's agents of chaos pack up and leave, and long after the fraudsters in whose name this hearing was supposedly called are prosecuted and imprisoned, the good people of Minnesota will still be picking up the pieces from these senseless acts of cruelty and violence. As we forge ahead, I hope Minnesotans will remain grounded in a sense of justice, a sense of right and wrong. We know that the way to deter crime is to pursue offenders regardless of who they are.
That's right,
not
John.
to
Imagine
pardon
if he
them
was.
because of who they know. We understand that a key to keeping our people safe is to allow prosecutors to uphold the law, not to punish them for refusing to violate it. And we appreciate that public trust comes from building common sense anti-fraud safeguards into our programs, not by tearing down established norms. I've been invited here today to talk about how Minnesota pursues these objectives, and I hope we can have a conversation about how to strengthen program integrity in every state in the nation. A single taxpayer dollar wasted on fraud is a dollar we can't tolerate. That's why, as governor, I have taken decisive action. I appointed a head of program integrity to oversee statewide anti-fraud
Now
efforts.
you do.
I created the position of Inspector General
Now
at the
you
Minnesota
have.
Department of Education. At the Department of Human Services,
Keep in mind, a young kid, 20-year-old Nick Shirley, is the one who brought this to everybody's attention. It never would have been looked at all if it wasn't for him.
I ordered data-driven reviews and, where appropriate, corrective action against providers. I've directed my administration to work with our partners in state, federal, and tribal law enforcement to make sure that fraudsters go to jail. Our cooperation with the FBI and the Department of Justice have led to serious criminal charges for over 75 individuals. Most importantly, year in and year out, and long before Minnesota programs were featured on right-wing social media, I've worked with the Minnesota legislature to give state agencies the
surely an
authority
idiot,
they need
Steve.
to take action based on red flags when they discover them.
Explain that.
There's undoubtedly more to do. We'll continue to do the important work of combating fraud, but as we do so, we're going to remain true to Minnesota principles. We will feed our hungry children. We will help the poor afford health care. We will assist people with disabilities while also keeping fraud in check. We'll demonstrate our decency, our integrity, and never yield to political scapegoating, particularly of our most vulnerable communities. In these extraordinarily trying times, the people of Minnesota have come together to show the world their values. I'm proud and honored to be their governor, and I look forward to today's questions.
Thank you, Governor. We now recognize Attorney General Ellison.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. And thank you,
Yes,
Ranking
correct.
Member
Yeah, you might be
Garcia.
right about that one.
And thank you to all the members of the committee.
Yeah, this
My
one's
name
a real
is Chief
scumbag,
Ellison,
this guy.
and I have the honor of serving as Minnesota's Attorney General. You have invited me here today to speak about the topic I feel very strongly about, fraud enforcement. I look forward to discussing the contributions of my office and the contributions we've made to fighting fraud in our state. Fraud in government programs is reprehensible. It takes food from the tables of the hungry. It takes shelter from those without it. I have worked every day as Attorney General to hold fraudsters accountable, and I'm proud of our record. We've won 300 Medicaid fraud convictions, more than any other state of similar size, and recovered over $80 million for Minnesota taxpayers. We've returned tens of millions of dollars to victims of consumer fraud in Minnesota. Since 2019, our Charities Division has resolved over 50 investigations and dissolved 17 sham nonprofits.
Marcus, thanks for the sub.
It's important to note that under Minnesota law, my office has limited jurisdiction over criminal matters. The only
As I was saying yesterday, for those of you that sub and it doesn't show up on the screen, let me know in the chat so I can give you credit if you have your if you're set to private, where you don't let people know who you're subscribed to. It won't show up on the screen.
kind of criminal case we can prosecute all on our own is Medicaid fraud. Any other kind of criminal case must be referred to us by county attorneys. Still, we've punched above our weight.
Let's get to
where we do
100
have
likes
criminal
if we can
jurisdiction.
early
I'm proud of that.
tonight.
Over the past 6 years, my Medicaid
And let's share the
fraud
stream to
control
as many
unit
people as you
is
can
ranked
for me.
5th in the nation in fraud convictions. Last week, I urged the state legislators to pass a
Ethan, thanks for
bipartisan
the,
Medical
sub.
Assistance Protection Act, which would give us additional resources to prosecute Medicaid fraudsters. Where fraud occurs outside of our jurisdiction, my office has and will continue assisting our local and federal partners. When our help is requested, we support our 87 county attorneys in Minnesota, and we regularly coordinate with federal investigators and prosecutors to combat fraud. That type of collaboration between enforcers at all levels
2 p.m.
of the
Thank you for the
government is
sub.
essential in this fight. And that is why, if we are to discuss law enforcement efforts in Minnesota, we cannot ignore the devastating effects of Operation Metro Surge. As you know, the Trump administration, on the pretext of fighting fraud, unleashed over 3,000 masked, armed agents on the streets of Minnesota. And as a result, 2 U.S. citizens were killed by federal agents, Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Federal law enforcement
They're just going to keep bringing this up.
Cooperate with us in investigating their deaths.
2 people who
Young,
inserted
innocent
themselves into
children
something
were
they shouldn't
detained
have.
and traumatized. Schools and businesses were forced to close, costing
Warmonger,
countless families
exactly.
their jobs, their livelihoods, their education, and costing our state hundreds of millions of dollars in economic damage. Operation Metro Surge did nothing to address fraud in our state. It harmed our economy, it scarred our people, and it dealt a devastating blow to fraud enforcement in Minnesota. As a result of Metro Surge, federal prosecutors' efforts to fight fraud in Minnesota have suffered a major setback. In the U.S. Attorney's Office, 6 high-ranking attorneys resigned because of the Department of Justice pressured them to investigate Renee Good's grieving widow. 8 more prosecutors then followed. The remaining staff should be spending their time prosecuting fraudsters and criminals. Instead, they are drowning in immigration-related petitions resulting from Operation Metro Surge. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we cannot combat fraud without consistent messaging and support from our political leaders. All sides, Republicans and Democrats, the federal government and the states, must work together if we are going to win the fight against those who would steal from the public. We need our leaders to unite in that effort, not to use it as a political tool to score political points. I stand ready and willing to work with the members of this committee to advance the cause of holding fraudsters accountable. Now more than ever, we need coordinated, cooperative engagement across law enforcement if we are to achieve our goals. I look forward to your questions.
Now, keep in mind, for some of you who don't remember, in 2018, Karen Monahan, an environmental activist and former girlfriend of Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, accused him of physical and emotional abuse, including an alleged 2016 incident where she claimed he dragged her off a bed while yelling obscenities. Now, if it were anybody else or if it were a Republican, you would never hear the end of it. But this guy is still, to this day, the Attorney General, and now is saying, well, we're doing all these things to combat fraud, but never did it before. And as you can see in our poll so far, 80% of you believe that they're in on it.
Thank you, General. Now recognize Reverend Tolgard for her opening statement.
Chairman, ranking members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am the Reverend Mariah Tolgard, and I serve as senior pastor at Hamlin Church United Methodist in St. Paul, Minnesota. I come before you today in my personal capacity as a pastor, as a citizen, as a mother, an ordinary Minnesotan who has witnessed up close the fear and harm that Operation Metro Surge has inflicted on our state. The hearing today is about fraud in Minnesota, which is serving as a pretext for the terror the federal government has brought to the people of Minnesota. This fraud has been used as a rationale for deploying 3,000 federal immigration enforcement agents into our state in operations that target the most vulnerable among us, but are indiscriminately impacting all of us. Let me tell you about what this looks like where I live. In my church, members have been afraid to come to worship and have even postponed funerals. An elderly Hmong man in our city, a U.S. citizen, was taken from his home in the freezing cold wearing only his underwear and a blanket. ICE vehicles drive recklessly through our neighborhoods in packs of 4 to 6, stopping people of color for proof of citizenship, including a local police officer.
Yes, Mr. Pumper, that's
in
true.
St. Paul Public Schools, where my 3 daughters attend, nearly a quarter of students enrolled in distance learning because families were too afraid to leave their homes. My 8-year-old struggles to sleep at night
Oh, give me a
because
break.
she is afraid ICE agents might break into our house.
How ridiculous.
At local elementary schools in Minnesota and across
Thank you, Kim.
the country,
Thank you for the sub.
students are practicing drills for what to do if ICE is near their school. Let that sit with you. American children are now practicing two kinds of drills at school, one for an active shooter and one to protect themselves from their own government.
Somebody mentioned earlier in the chat, none of these people cared about anybody else who are here in America that are affected by illegal immigration, either violently or income-wise. And this person is obviously bleeding heart, and she's making this stuff up about her kid being afraid of ICE. She knows her kid isn't afraid of ICE.
Security. That is a nation failing
exactly. It's a
its
parenting
children.
issue.
This is happening to all of our neighbors in Minnesota. Every Minnesotan has stories that will stay with you. From hearing of someone hiding in a walk-in cooler
Sounds
or
like
the back
spam
room
burger,
when
yeah.
ICE stormed into their workplace, to friends and family members being followed when dropping off their children at daycare. In Minnesota, we love our neighbors. We care for one another, and
No, you
because we
don't.
believe that every person bears
This
the
woman
image
doesn't
of
care
God,
about people.
we've built systems that reflect that belief. Free meals for all children, health care for families who need it,
Right.
schools
On your
where every
taxpayer
kid
dime.
belongs. That's what love of neighbor looks like in action.
She thinks taking your money and
This
giving it to people who don't
administration has
deserve it is
targeted
loving.
Minnesota because we live out our values of loving our neighbors. These tactics aimed at undermining those values have not succeeded. When unidentified masked agents appeared on our streets,
I think you're right,
Minnesotans
Karen. It's
put
probably
on
going to
their
go that
own
high.
uniforms, and it said neighbor. Motivated by faith and conscience, we bought groceries for families in hiding. We paid rent. We drove.
Where is she helping other people that need it? So, in other words, I'm going to take money that is, and these churches are funded by NGOs, which is funded through taxpayer dollars. She's giving it to people who live here illegally.
Drove children to school.
Joey
We
KO,
stood
thank you for
vigil
the
at
sub. I
mosques.
appreciate it.
We served as constitutional observers. We pledged to care for children if parents were detained. We sang, we marched, we prayed. As a pastor, I say to you, if you feel even a flicker of discomfort hearing these stories, pay attention to it.
Shut up.
If you hear about children like Liam Ramos, if you saw the videos of the murders of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, if you know of workers arrested in the
Wow.
very restaurants where they serve federal agents their meals, if you understand that citizens and legal residents have been wrongfully detained and something in you tightens, that is not partisanship, that is conscience. In my faith tradition, we call that the still, quiet voice, the voice of God.
This is a very dangerous person. Keep that in mind, because this is someone who is willing, she is so worried about people that are here illegally as opposed to those who are here legally. And she's willing to take your money, your taxpayer dollars, and give it to other people. That these types of people will destroy our country and are destroying
It's
our
not
country.
too late to listen, to change our minds, our hearts, and our policies. To the members of this committee and our leaders across government, the question I leave with you is simple. What are you willing to do about it? Your silence has a cost, and it is being paid right now by children who cannot sleep, families who cannot grieve, and communities that are hollowed out. To Americans across the country and those watching from home, and particularly to the families still too afraid to leave their houses, there are more people fighting for you than you know. Jesus teaches us in Matthew 25, whatever you do for the least of these, you do unto me. History will tell its story about us, but long before then, our own souls will know whether we stood with them or turned away. No nation can build a true future on the terror of its own people. Security built on fear
That's right, Anthony.
security will shatter the first time it is tested. Only a community that chooses love of neighbor over fear will endure, and that is
She doesn't
still
abide,
within
Bunny. You're
our
right. She
power
doesn't
to
abide by the
become.
law.
Thank you for for allowing me to share our story. I am deeply proud.
No, Igor, you're wrong. Illegals cost way more to the country than they do providing taxes. That's a ridiculous argument. I've argued that. You're new here, obviously. I've argued that a million times over. So you don't know what you're talking about.
To be a Minnesotan.
Thank you. With that objection, Majority Whip Tom Emmer from Minnesota and Representative McCollum, also of Minnesota, are waived on to the committee for the purpose of questioning witnesses at today's committee hearing. Without objection, so ordered. And now, okay, I'd like to recognize Representative McCollum for a UC.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to,
Bye,
for the
Coriander.
record, have a unanimous request put in with the statement. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. We'll now begin our questions, and Chair recognizes the Chairman of the House
No,
Judiciary
Charles,
Committee,
you are incorrect.
Mr. Jordan from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's why I'm
Governor,
here,
why
you're
didn't you
there.
tell the truth? Why didn't you just tell the truth about the Feeding Our Future program? This program, my understanding, received $3 million the first year. Within a couple years was getting $200 million of taxpayer money. Whistleblowers raised concerns. As the chairman said, auditors raised concerns. Everybody raised concerns. March 30th, 2021, the payments are stopped. And a little over a month later, the payments are restarted. Why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments?
That's right, Dean. How do you pay taxes without a Social Security number?
we did tell you. And Feeding Our Future grew because
All
of
you
the
need to say.
pandemic. And
I didn't ask that question. I said, why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments? The payments stopped because there were concerns, obviously, you wouldn't stop the payments. Then they're restarted a month later. What was the reason for restarting the payments?
my understanding was the agency believed that the court had required them to make those payments.
And that was false, wasn't it? You repeated
think that
You
is-
said that, didn't you? You
I-
said that's
I don't
why
think-
the reason, you said the reason you restarted is because the court ordered you to do so. Is that right?
I don't believe that is settled yet, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, I think it is, because the court did something that I don't know if I've ever seen it. They issued a statement saying you were wrong in what you were saying. This is from the court. It says, Feeding Our Future versus Minnesota Department of Education, correcting reports and statements by Governor Tim Walz concerning orders issued by the court. Here's what the judge says. Governor Tim Walz told the media that the Minnesota Department of Education attempted in payments to FOF because of possible fraud, but that Judge Guthman ordered payments to continue in April 2021. Next sentence. That is false. So you said something that wasn't true. He further states this, Judge Guthman, the court says this, Judge Guthman never ordered the Department of Education to resume payments to Feeding Our Future in April 2021 or at any other time. So I want to know, why didn't you tell the truth?
Congressman, the attorneys at the Department of Education interpreted that differently. Both of those judges are no longer on the bench, and I think that
Let me just read the very
interpretation.
first sentence. The first 7 words.
Bubba,
This is
thank
not
you for
some
the
unnamed
follow-up,
source talking to the New
for the
York
sub.
Times. This is not some anonymous source talking to whatever your Minnesota Star Tribune or whatever your paper is. This is the court speaking. First sentence, first 7 words. Due to inaccurate statements by the governor, Ramsey County District Court judge has issued and authorized this following news released. That's pretty straightforward. So the court's lying?
I can't tell you, Congressman, but the
Well,
interpretation
somebody's
was
lying. Somebody's lying, because you can't say the court ordered you to restart the payments, and then the court says we didn't order you to restart the payments. So either you're lying or the court's lying. And I'm just asking you, which one is it?
I just simply know what the attorneys at the agency believed, that it was a misinterpretation.
Could
And
it
I would
be-
note that those
Could it
payments.
be you were trying to hide behind the court, Governor?
No, it's
Could
not
that
new.
maybe be the reason why you issued the
It's, it
statements
was
you
last
did, and why the
week.
court had to do something you never see done before? They issue a press
Relatively
statement
new.
saying you're wrong. The governor is wrong. His statement is, their words, not mine, false. Could that be the
Knowles,
reason?
that's
That was not the interpretation
in this
of the
particular
attorneys.
case.
And-
You're absolutely
And you know,
right.
court work, you can appeal those, Congressman, as you well know. I'm sure
Is it
there's.
all about politics, Governor?
No, it's about taking care of our people, which
Yeah, these
Minnesota does
programs
better
go
than
from
anyone
3
else.
million. The behavioral intervention program went from 3 million to 400 million in 5 years. The housing stabilization went from 2.6 million to 104 million. The integrated community supports went from 4.6 million to 170 million in 3 years. And this is unbelievable what's happening. And you're trying to hide behind some pretend court order, some court order that didn't exist. Governor, who's Casey Magan?
I don't know who Casey Magan is.
Well, I'll tell you. Mr. Magan is a Somali American and a fraud investigator in the guy beside you's office, in the Attorney General's office. Here's what he said. There was a perception that forcefully tackling this issue might cause political backlash among the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc. Did that have
There you
anything to
go.
do with this whole fraud scheme that went on in your state, Governor?
1,000%
It did not, Congressman.
Did not. So you're saying Mr. Casey Magan is lying too?
I'm not.
Yeah.
You're the only one telling the truth in the whole state.
Yep.
Mr. Magan, who's a fraud investigator at the Attorney General's office, says it's politics. The court said
I couldn't speak
you
for
were
Mr.
stating-
Magan. You asked me a question.
I know. I'm
And
asking.
I said no when you asked me the question.
I'm saying Casey Magan said just the opposite.
I don't know.
So the court's wrong and Casey Magan's wrong. You're the only guy right.
There you go.
How many people have been indicted in your state right now? Do you know, Governor?
I don't have those numbers with me.
He doesn't
Don't?
have any numbers.
98 people have been indicted. You happen to know how many are Somali American?
I don't. We don't investigate or
This is the
prosecute
important
people
number.
based on ethnicity, religion.
Neither do I. We shouldn't do that. But Mr. Magan is a Somali American who just said that the court, one of the concerns was this is a core voting bloc. And I just want to know if you know how many of the 98 people who have been indicted in your state are Somali.
I don't. Their ethnicity is not my concern.
Wow, everybody in the
85% of
chat who's
people
against
indicted
all
were
of this
Somali
and thinks
American.
that's
Key voting
TDS. How
bloc.
about
I think
that?
That's what drove this whole thing.
How about
That
that,
you
chronically
Gentleman
funny?
yields back. Before I recognize the ranking member, it's my understanding, Mr. Biggs, you seek recognition.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have some uses. Here you go. Biden clemency for convicted fraudsters met with outrage. Next one. Biden's clemency and pardon list includes former elected officials. Next one. The drug dealers, thieves, and gang leaders granted clemency by Joe Biden. Next one. North Dakota judge blasts Biden for setting fraudsters free. Next one. Victims shocked after Biden grants clemency to kids for cash. Next one. Who has Joe Biden pardoned?
Pepper GG, thank you for the sub.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now
Let's
recognizes
get to it.
ranking member
Let's
Garcia
get
from
to 100
California.
likes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank, of course, our witnesses again for being here. Now, of course, over the past 2 months, countless brave Minnesotans have shared their stories of heartbreak and violence and terror, not just with us in this committee, but with folks across the country. Peaceful protesters are being shot in the streets. Children have been snatched from their schools. People dragged from their cars and tackled at work. And we know that parents, of course, have been missing work and children have been missing school. Now, Reverend Tolgard, I want the country to really understand the effects on kids. Are you seeing families who can't go to work, who can't go grocery shopping, and who can't take their kids to school or the library or the park because they're terrified to leave their home? Are you seeing that?
Yes, that's what we are seeing in Minnesota.
And this includes, of course, U.S. citizens, right? We're talking about also families, U.S. citizen families, and kids who are United States citizens. Is that correct?
Yes, people who are U.S. citizens and legal residents.
Well, thank you. I want to just show this image here. This is an image of some kids, including, by the way, one of Liam Ramos's classmates. These are kids that are being held at U.S. detention centers and detention facilities. Now, Reverend Tolgard, when children hear about thousands of kids being detained, reportedly almost 4,000, that must be terrifying. Is that correct?
Ed, thank you for
That
the
is
sub.
absolutely terrifying for children to hear these stories and to fear for that experience.
And would you say that kids are scared at their school?
Kids are scared at their schools. at
Parents
their
are
home.
scared of what's going to happen to their children. Would you say that is correct
Yes,
also?
that is correct.
Well, thank you. Now, we're discussing the violence and brutality that's happened, and I want to show another image that's kind of difficult, I think, to see, but I think it's important for the American public to continue to see it. Now, this is the driver's seat of Renee Good's car seat after an ICE agent shot her dead.
After she tried to run him
Now,
over.
Reverend Tolgard, are families in your community afraid that this sort of horrific image could happen to them next?
Yes.
That's a lie.
Are
She's a
kids
liar for saying that.
scared that
She
this
knows.
type of horrific image could happen to one of their parents?
Kids like my own, kids like the kids in my church are afraid that that could happen to their parents when they speak out.
And let's remember that an ICE agent specifically told a protester, have y'all not learned
right,
from the
Heather.
past couple of days This is just 2 days after Renee Good was shot. That is being told to people on the ground in Minneapolis and across the country, across Minnesota,
tried to run
and it's
him
not
over.
acceptable. We should be clear here. This violence does not make us safer. It does not address fraud, waste, and abuse. It doesn't help families with health care, does not grow or build small businesses, and it certainly, as we're continuing to discuss, is not preventing the kind of fraud that Republicans are discussing here today. Now, Governor, can you walk us through specifically how Operation Metro Surge affected Minnesota's ability to investigate actual fraud?
Well, thank you, Congressman. Well, first of all, as I've said, we've been partners with the federal, our federal partners, whether that be the FBI or be the U.S. Attorney's Office, which I will note was one of the premier U.S. Attorney's Office, regardless of who they were appointed by. Right now, those lead investigators and basically that whole team has left that office. They've not been filled back in. The U.S. Attorney himself was in front of a federal judge yesterday on contempt issues of that office not working together. Now, look.
Okay, I'm only going to say this once because I've already gone into like an entire group of spaces with thousands of people. And it's been more than established by federal agents and lawyers and everything else that, first of all, Thomas, you're saying that she was shot through the driver window. That is incorrect. This is what I'm talking about, where there are people in this chat that just come in here and say ridiculous things that the ICE agent just murdered her. The first shot was through the windshield, not through the driver's side door. So the bottom line is going to be this, and we got a lot of people in here. We're going to have a lot of chatting and stuff like that. I'll just start picking off people and just removing you, Brendan. Thanks for the sub, because all you're doing right now is causing problems. If you want me to read a chat at this point with so many people in here, I will only be at this point reading super chats. But for those of you who are going to make false claims that like she was shot through the side door and not mention the bullet hole that was obviously in the windshield, then I'm going to start removing people that are going to be lying about things that are in this chat. I'm not going to put up with it.
We're going to prosecute, as we have, every single person that's involved in fraud. But we can't do it alone. The Attorney General's office is doing everything they can. He has consistently come and asked the legislature for more money, more of the investigators he needs. But right now is the backlog at the U.S. Attorney's Office is being challenged by the federal courts. It makes it more difficult for us to get those cases over to them. But the good news is the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is continuing to do those. We got a conviction this week. Those are things that'll continue on. And while we need to put in all the safeguards, we need to, as you heard the Attorney General's opening statement, if we partner together in this, our chance of defeating this fraud is that much higher. But right now, it's stymied. There's no investigators over there. There's no U.S. attorneys. The FBI has been decimated, and it's very difficult.
And that right there, the American public needs to hear. I mean, it's completely outrageous what's happened to those that are actually trying to take on fraud in Minnesota and across the country. Those offices have been decimated, and there's no support, not acceptable. And Governor, finally, there appears to be actually no evidence that ICE and DHS reign of terror in Minnesota that continues has actually prevented any fraud. Is that your assessment, sir?
That's correct. What you saw on the streets didn't do anything to it. And we've actively asked, if you have folks who can help us, if you have folks who are good at the forensics, if you're that can help us do this, we want you there, as we have for the last 7 years that I've been governor. We partnered together and convicted people.
Thank you. And with that, I also, just for the record, want to introduce our report as well. Today, the Democratic staff released it as well as far as relates to this hearing and Operation Metro Surge. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection to order, Chair now recognizes
Sean
our
Hennessy,
Majority
you're
Whip,
right. I mean,
Representative Emmer from Minnesota.
These are the most basic things of what's going on. I'm just not going to have these people ruin the chat for the rest of us.
For appearing before the committee today. Gentlemen, let's see if we can agree on at least one thing today. Today's hearing is titled Oversight of Fraud and Misuse of Federal Funds in Minnesota. Can we agree that this fraud is a serious thing, Governor Walz? Yes or no? Can we agree on that?
Yes, any fraud is serious.
Thank you. because it's interesting that you and I agree that it's a serious thing.
Conversation is
considering the man
important, but
sitting
if somebody's
next to
going to say that Renee Good was shot through the side window and not mention the windshield, and they're just going to continue to bring that kind of stuff up and say that she didn't try to run him over, I'm just, like I said, it's not what happened. It's been clear as day from lawyers and federal agents that the shot, it was a clean shoot, whether you like it or not. I'm not going to get into those types of arguments here.
Your
That's not
Attorney
what this is
General
about.
Keith Ellison just 2 months ago said, quote, "This is a political matter. This is not a serious thing," end quote. Attorney General Ellison, is there an organized crime ring
That's right.
operating
He did
in
have
Minnesota?
surgery on his knee. He was hit hard.
I'll answer for you, sir. Governor Walz believes there is an active crime ring in our state. In October, the governor said, quote, "We've got an organized crime ring in Minnesota. I think it's been going on for years." Moving on, Mr. Ellison, I, along with millions of Americans, have grave concerns over your alleged relationships with Somali fraudsters who have since been charged and convicted of federal crimes. I'm sure you are aware that over 90% of the defendants charged in the Feeding Our Future fraud case are of Somali descent. In fact, you have personal knowledge of these people. There's a 54-minute audio tape of your meeting with these criminals in December of 2021. And during your meeting, they complained to you about
James, thank you for the
increased
sub.
scrutiny of their nonprofits, and you told them, quote, "Of course I'm here to help," end quote. It's on the internet. Anyone can listen to you say that. Since then, you claim you were not aware of their crimes in the $250 million Feeding Our Future scheme, the largest pandemic fraud case in the nation. But just weeks after your December 2021 meeting, the FBI executed search warrants that you never would have requested in the Feeding Our Future fraud investigation. Now let's fast forward to September of 2022, 10 months after you met with the Somali fraudsters. Your office issued a press release stating, quote, "Minnesota Attorney
Nicole,
General
thank you
Keith
for the
Ellison
sub.
and his office have been deeply involved for 2 years
Let's
in
get to
holding
100
Feeding
likes,
Our
everybody,
Future
please.
accountable," end quote. So according to your office, sir, you have been deeply involved in the Feeding Our Future case since September of 2020. That actually sounds like you are saying that at the time of your infamous meeting with the Somali fraudsters, you were already aware of the allegations of
baklava.
fraud. When you had this meeting in December 2021, did you know,
well
sir,
said.
about the long-running FBI investigation into Feeding Our Future? Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Representative Emmer,
Kevin, you are
Claiming my
correct.
time. When did you personally become aware of the FBI investigation? That's all I'm asking.
Representative Emmer, as you know, I have addressed this issue many times.
All right. Reclaiming my time. In that same meeting with the fraudsters, Mr. Attorney General, you took aim at the Minnesota Department of Education. You stated that the Minnesota Department of Education had fought the nonprofit in very disgusting ways, in a very racist, xenophobic, and Islamophobic manner. You actually asked for the names of all these folks who are just hung up.
And if you tell me to
offered
be
call
quiet
the
in my own
Minnesota
chat, I
Department
will
of
just remove
Education
you.
to,
So,
quote,
bye, Tammy.
demand some explanations. We now know that when you made these comments, the Biden DOJ was working with the Minnesota Department of Education and that their work exposed the massive fraud ring. Pretty bad look for you, sir. Either you were oblivious to what was going on under your nose, or worse, you were trying to obstruct the work of the Minnesota Department of Education. So I can see the time is getting short. Mr. Chairman, we are left with two questions. One, what did Governor Walz and Keith Ellison know about the fraud? And two, when did they actually know it? I would suggest that if they do not give direct and truthful answers to both these questions at this hearing, then they both need to be put under oath in a deposition. This is a serious thing, Mr. Attorney General. You are the only one who thinks protecting taxpayer dollars is political. Mr. Ellison, my concern is that you actively obstructed this investigation in exchange for campaign donations, a quid pro quo. If these concerns are proven to be true, you should be disbarred and you should go to jail. I yield back.
Very well.
Gentleman
Very
yields
well
back.
said,
Chair
Mr.
now
Emmer.
recognizes Ms. Norton from Washington, D.C.
He should have been put in jail a long time ago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is critical that the federal government support people who need assistance with food, housing, and health care. Unfortunately, as long as the government provides these services, there will be bad actors trying to take advantage of them.
Pete, thank you for the
We need to
sub.
prevent and identify these fraudsters so that social services can reach those who need them. However, we cannot recklessly deny help to many people who need services because of a few bad actors.
A few.
My Republican colleagues have now held 2 hearings to talk about fraud in one single state, but they have completely ignored the fact that the Trump administration is the most corrupt administration in history. If Republicans really cared about fraud, abuse, and holding criminals accountable, they would call them out. Donald Trump for firing 17 inspectors general. These internal watchdogs are the front line of rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse of federal agencies. The Trump administration has also retaliated against whistleblowers
What?
and allowed administration officials to engage in serious conflicts of interest that often cross the line into outright corruption. We need inspectors general, whistleblower
we dodged the bullet
protections,
for
and
sure.
rules prohibiting conflicts of interest to protect federal programs and make sure that people can get the services they need. Across the country, Americans are struggling to afford their health care, premiums, and groceries. The Trump administration should be
She can't even read
strengthening
the script she
the
was given.
social safety net, not cutting the safeguards that catch the fraudsters taking advantage of it. And I yield back.
Well, we got to get
Gentle
100
yields
likes.
back.
We're only
I'll
at
now recognize
83.
myself for 5 minutes. Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison, my questions are going to be simple and direct. Governor Walz, you were
I'm not
inaugurated as
asking for much
governor on
here.
January
Let's get to
17,
100 likes.
2019, and have served in that role through 2 terms ever since,
Probably
correct?
is drunk.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
During the time period 2019 and 2020, while you were serving as governor, isn't it true that state auditors and officials raised concerns about fraud and vulnerabilities in programs overseen by your administration?
I can't confirm that, but I'm assuming we have always ongoing OLA.
I'll take that as a yes. Those warnings were communicated to senior officials in your administration, including yourself, correct?
I can't speak if it was directly.
I think the correct answer to that would also be yes. Despite those warnings, you did not order a broad stop payment or suspension of payment in any program at that time, correct?
We're not going to stop payments of Feed Children until we have the proof that things happen. In 2019, we did start taking action. I went to the legislature, that legislative
Governor
session.
Walz, when fraud concerns were raised early in your tenure in the Child Care Assistance Program, did your administration stop payments at that time?
The Child Care Assistance Program and
The answer is no. When fraud concerns were
Would
raised...
you like me to answer or not, Chairman?
Well, it's yes or no.
I want you to help.
You've already answered the question. You said you didn't ever stop payments, and that's what the problem is, and that's what the Democrats are complaining about. Oh, my gosh, Trump stopped payments. Well, my God, you lost billions to fraud in Minnesota. That's what this hearing's
Mr.
about.
Chairman,
you didn't stop payments because you didn't want to rock the boat. And when fraud concerns
That's not
were
correct,
raised...
Chairman.
When fraud concerns were raised in Medicaid, home and community-based services, did your administration stop payments? No, you did not. When fraud concerns were raised in non-emergency medical transportation, did your administration stop payments?
Chairman, if I could mention what a stop payment meant by what the administration did last week is 400,000 children without health care. Are you stopping payment if one person?
We believe that's your fault and the Attorney General's fault Because you do nothing
Chan.
about fraud, even though everyone in America sees
Our Medicare
with their
error
own
rate is
eyes
lower than your
the
state's.
fraud. You have been defrauded. You have not been good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. And the Democrat position is, well, keep the money flowing. The American taxpayers have had enough.
I think that's
They
a
have
fair
had enough. They
uncharacterization.
want their taxpayer dollars spent wisely. We all support social
That's
programs
not a fair
to the vulnerable.
characterization.
But if you're going to waste the money to fraudsters, then we have to stop and recalculate.
We're not. We're putting them in jail when we can, Chairman. And some of these programs are crafted in such a way that there's a procedure to follow. And I'm with you. $1 is too much. I don't think there's a lot of difference here if you want to help us get at this. The question is it a sledgehammer? Is it a scalpel? I understand there's no political upside to it.
Let's get into what we've talked. You eventually did pause payments in certain programs, but that wasn't until late 2025 after the federal government stepped in. Is that correct?
I don't think that's a fair characterization of stepped in. We've been partners in this and working on them, but
Let's move on. And that decision occurred only after large-scale fraud had already taken place for years. Now, Governor Walz, employees inside state agencies raised concerns about fraud and improper payments for years. Is that correct?
inside agencies, we've been prosecuting them for years. Yes.
But they have raised concern. Agencies have raised concern about fraud in Minnesota, correct? For
Each
years.
of those, yes, when they do and they're prosecuted. Yes.
Some of those employees faced retaliation after raising those concerns. Is that correct?
That is not correct, Chairman.
Okay.
Minnesota has strong whistleblower protections.
Attorney General Ellison, you are the chief legal officer of the state of Minnesota, correct?
Yes.
Your office advises agencies on compliance with federal and state law, correct?
Yes.
Retaliation against whistleblowers reporting fraud is unlawful, correct?
That is right.
At any point during your tenure, did you tell state agencies to stop payments due to credible fraud allegations, yes or no?
Sir, we prosecuted over 300 people in the Medicaid fraud area.
300, I would predict is a drop in the bucket, but you've never said to stop payments. That's
it's one of the highest rates in the country, sir.
Well, you have one of the highest fraud rates in the country in Minnesota.
Yeah,
that's not true.
right.
And my office doesn't have the authority to do a stop payment. We prosecute criminals when they're presented us by the agency.
So the answer is no, unfortunately. No one's ever from your office said to stop payments until we can get the fraud under control. So to summarize, you both knew about fraud risk and payments continued. Our investigation has shown that whistleblowers who were alerted about the widespread fraud were ignored, sidelined, and even retaliated against. Only after federal authorities ultimately stepped in did you take any action. It's not this committee's responsibility to decide guilt or dole out punishment, but it's clear there was a massive failure of oversight and, quite frankly, a failure of leadership. One wonders whether either of you should bear some personal responsibility for the billions of dollars siphoned off by fraudsters under your noses in the state that you led. Again, this isn't for the committee to decide, but based on your answers today and apparent failure to take any responsibility, still the answer to that question has become abundantly clear. And now
Mr. Chair, I seek unanimous consent to enter items into the record.
All right, before I recognize Mr. Lynch, Ms. Randall, you have a UC?
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a November 12th, 2025 article from ProPublica entitled How Trump Has Exploited Pardons and Clemency to Reward Allies and Supporters, which shows President
Michelle, there really needs to be an age limit, a certain amount of years that anyone can hold office because that congresswoman can barely speak. Yes, I agree. That's one of the problems that we have right now in Congress is that there should be an age limit and should also be term limits.
President Trump rewards those in his good graces. I also seek recognition to insert into the record a Washington Post article from December 19th, 2025 entitled Trump's Pardons Wipe Out Payments to Defrauded Victims, which shows that President Trump lets criminals and fraudsters walk free. And I also seek unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from May 29th, 2025 from ABC News titled Trump's Flurry of Pardons Includes Some to Campaign Contributors.
And
Thanks.
Ms. Presley, we'll do one at a time. We'll go to Mr. Lynch, then I'll recognize you. Mr. Lynch from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
1971, yeah.
Governor, good to see you, my friend. Attorney General Ellison, good to see you again.
Reverend,
thank you for your willingness to testify before the committee. I want to shift gears here a minute, and I want to focus on ICE. So I was recently asked to serve as the co-chair of the 5 for 26 soccer tournament. It's a global tournament, the largest sporting event in the world. And my home city of Boston has been asked to host a lot of the games. In Boston, we'll host teams from Morocco, Ghana, Bolivia, Iraq, Scotland, France, England, and Suriname. We'll also host over 3 million foreign national visitors who are coming into Boston for these tournaments. And we recently learned from the Trump administration that ICE will play a key role in the security operations during those games. So we've got all these people flying in, foreign nationals, a lot of different countries, South America and elsewhere.
Is that right, Heather?
Governor, since you've had direct and relevant experience on dealing with the Metro surge and the security operations of ICE, I was interested in getting your thoughts and your observations and any recommendations you might have to help us with confronting our experience or what we expect to see during these games with ICE coming in as well as so many foreign visitors.
Well, as I think the world saw, and don't take my word for it, take professional law enforcement across Minnesota and across the country, the most unprofessional, aggressive force that I think you could imagine. And I was here in front of this committee and answered all your questions on June 12th. And I warned this committee what a masked group of folks turned loose in an American city could do. And if I'm not mistaken, I said someone could get killed doing this. And I just want to be very clear about this. When Tom Homan had to come in to clean up the mess of Secretary Noem and Greg Bovino, Secretary Homan himself acknowledged Minnesota follows the law, exactly as I told you in this committee. So my advice to you, Mr. Lynch, is to get very public, upfront commitments from these folks. While I disagree with Mr. Holman's views on many things, he's at least professional enough that he pulled the leash back and pulled these folks out of Minnesota after, again, misrepresenting the number of people they were detaining, misrepresenting before he got there exactly what Minnesota did. And I'm just going to name it on accountability. The Secretary of DHS, being chastised by Republican senators, added insult to injury to Minnesota, pouring salt in the wounds of the parents of Alex Preddy and Renee Good's family by not even apologizing or acknowledging.
Debbie, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Just so you know, those are the things that helps me continue doing this and having people in is super chatters like Debbie and doing things like that. Thank you very, very much. I greatly appreciate it.
And if you want accountability, for one of the times, as far as I know, the attorneys know better, we are not being included in the investigation. And the actions that were taken of a gentleman who was shot in the leg was the night that Kristi Noem called me a domestic terrorist and said that this gentleman was attacking federal agents. Well, now we know the story. They lied. They are now under investigation, they being the federal agents. So look, I'm with you. I want your help on fraud. Why would I not want money to go to the programs I care deeply about, feeding people, clothing people, housing people? But what ICE did disrupted everything that we were doing. It disrupted our federal partners, and it forced our law enforcement agencies, who have worked hard to gain the public trust, to have the public believe in them. So my advice to you is, and especially when the world's coming to see this, let Boston's finest lead. Let the people of Massachusetts lead. Let the 10th Amendment stand for something and allow us to be able to do this. The people of Minnesota will hold us accountable if they don't feel we're doing a good enough job. But
yeah, that's right. You have to send in the federal government, Kevin, in order to clean up. You did do it in D.C. was a perfect example of having to send the National Guard in. Laura, thank you for the sub, because of people like Tim Walz. So these guys just keep saying, let us do our job, but you're not doing your job.
To demonize and retribution against a state, in the words of the president, in the words of the vice president, have done nothing. So, Mr. Lynch, the world should be looking forward to coming, but I would get it up front, and I would make sure that Boston's police department are in the lead.
Thank you. Attorney General Ellison, we need coordination between law enforcement agencies. This is a big job. What are your views on that likelihood of cooperation from ICE?
Well, I hope you get the cooperation that you need. In Minnesota, we don't have a good record of cooperation, which is interesting because so many times in the past, we have had great cooperation between local federal enforcers and local state ones, and we've just worked seamlessly. Nowadays,
is that true, Shannon? Because it seems that it still is, but obviously you live there, so you would know better.
that has all changed, and that's quite unfortunate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. Thank you for the courtesy.
Gentleman yields back. Ms. Presley.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a February 2026 letter from 200 state lawmakers urging Congress to exercise its oversight authority and demand the administration immediately restore full child care funding that it had frozen for 5 states.
Without objection, it's ordered. Chair recognizes Dr. Fox from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here. Governor, you've reminded people that you were here last June. At that time, I reminded you that the Feeding Our Future scam made Minnesota ground zero for the largest COVID-19 fraud scheme in the nation. $250 million in federal taxpayer funds were taken out of the mouths of hungry children, and as the FBI noted, they were, quote, funneled into luxury homes, cars, and lavish lifestyles while families struggled. You assured me then that you wholeheartedly supported the federal government's effort to bring those responsible to justice. I appreciate your sentiment, but a person's actions matter more than their words. Governor Walz, when did you first become aware of the fraud in Feeding Our Future? A specific date, please.
Well, Congressman, it's good to see you. And having served in your job for 12 years, I can tell you my job is a little different as governor for 7 years. I take a lot of meetings. I certainly wouldn't specifically state, but I think during that pandemic, I think by late 2020, we started to see the irregularities. They were flagged. And I will note that we cooperated.
State officials were aware of the fraud in early 2020.
That's true.
So you're asking when I, in my office, the governor became good, and I don't have a specific date.
Okay.
But what I would say is, we provided witnesses, documents, the U.S. Attorney and the FBI, and 79 of those people have been prosecuted going back to 2022.
Okay. Well, when I was chair of the Committee on Education and Workforce, I issued you a subpoena in September 2024 because you and your administration were not forthcoming about how your administration, quote, failed to identify what has been described as the largest pandemic fraud in the nation, end quote. In September 2024, you were aware of the Feeding Our Future fraud and your administration's handling of it, correct? Yes or no?
2024? Yes, by that time we had already put people in jail and had extensively investigated.
This committee has testimony that the Minnesota Department of Education briefed your office about the Feeding Our Future's draft lawsuit and litigation hold on April 28, 2020. Let me jog your memory. Is that correct?
I can't speak specifically to that. And if it's
it was April 2020. That means Feeding Our Future received a total of over $200 million in federal funds after you and your administration knew about the fraud concerns. Why didn't you stop sending money to Feeding Our Future as soon as the fraud concerns were raised?
Congressman, is following the program, we notified USGA under the Trump administration's first term. We notified them, too, because it's a program administered out of USDA, and they were working to work through the process.
Didn't you say you were fearful of political retaliation?
No, I never said any such thing. I never said any such thing.
Well, that's what we understood. You were afraid of political retaliation. So, given the size and scope of the Feeding Our Future's fraud, I think you and your administration would have been on high alert looking for additional fraud in the state. But after seeing the handling of Feeding Our Futures and its $250 million in fraud, it came as no surprise to learn that even more staggering amounts of fraud, estimated at up to $9 billion, were uncovered in the Child Care Assistance Program, the Minnesota Medicaid program, and other programs. How could you allow such massive fraud schemes in your state to get to this point?
Congresswoman, we don't see anything by 9 million. Local press and everyone reports it about 300 million. But as I've said, if it's $1, it's too much. But we started in 2019 putting anti-fraud programs forward. After Feeding Our Future, we started going through and making sure every program had the integrity in it that it needed. And that's why you see convictions. That's why you see these programs going forward.
Why did it take nearly 7 years for you to get engaged to stop the fraud? 7 years.
We started in 2019, Congresswoman. It may be a surprise. If you arrest someone for stealing a car, other people are still going to try and steal cars. What we've tried to do is bring program integrity. But I'll go back to this. We're not going to shut down programs that have things that are going well in it, and we need to find that proper balance. And I've acknowledged that every year we're putting things in place in Inspector
Governor
General.
Governor Walz, you did not do your job. You did not do your job. You did not protect taxpayer dollars. You allowed massive fraud. You and Mr. Ellison allowed massive fraud to go on in the state of Minnesota. And it is
Richard, thank you for the
unfortunate, as somebody said, that you can't be held personally responsible at this stage of the game. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Krishnamurti from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Governor Walz, you've seen firsthand the brutal excessive force used by ICE and CBP agents in Minnesota. Unfortunately, we saw the same tactics employed in Chicago during Operation Midway Blitz. I want to turn now to ICE and CBP's horrific pattern of abuse. Secretary Noem went to our cities ostensibly under the guise of arresting, quote, the worst of the worst. But in Illinois, less than 3% of those arrested during Operation Midway Blitz had criminal histories. In Minnesota, the vast majority of those detained had never been in trouble with the law, correct?
So, yeah, they broke the law by coming here.
Congressman.
There were also more than 170 cases this year where ICE and CBP detained U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens should never be detained by ICE, correct?
That is correct. I would hope we all could agree on that.
Well, I hope so too. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, federal agents have pepper sprayed children, including this 1-year-old baby in Chicago. And children should never be pepper sprayed, right?
I would hope we could all agree on that, too. They should not.
And according to The Independent, CBP agents dragged a 67-year-old U.S. citizen out of his car, breaking his ribs and causing internal bleeding. No person should be subjected to that kind of treatment, right?
They should not, Congressman.
Attorney General Ellison, let me turn to another topic. In President Trump's second term, ICE has become America's highest funded federal law enforcement agency with a budget of more than $85 billion. If ICE were an army, this budget would make it the 13th largest army in the world. Let's look at where that money has gone. Last year, DHS spent $172 million on 2 private luxury jets for Secretary Noem. I assume you're not aware of a stop payment on that particular payment, right?
No, I'm not, sir.
Republican Senator John Kennedy yesterday grilled Secretary Noem about a $220 million ad campaign featuring her prominently, including on this horse in front of Mount Rushmore. Secretary Kennedy suggested this was wasteful spending, and I agree. I assume you'd agree with that as well, right?
I do.
Welcome, Michelle and Tammy. Thanks for the comments. And yeah, why are you bringing your children to a protest? That's also, once again, a really good question.
This gross misuse of funds must end now, and Secretary Noem must be held accountable. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. Chicago was ground zero for Secretary Noem's overreach when she launched Operation Midway Blitz. Chicago media reported that ICE and CBP agents had pepper sprayed a 1-year-old baby, shot at a pastor, harassed seniors, tased U.S. citizens, and even killed a person. It's clear that Midway Blitz was never intended to make Chicago safer. In December, ICE and CBP began Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota. Over 3,000 agents were sent to one state. There were military-style raids at child care centers, children kept home from school, adults postponing medical care. In Minneapolis, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, both U.S. citizens, were fatally shot by federal officers. It's clear that Operation Metro Surge was never intended to make Minnesota.
Kevin, good point. Do you notice that we don't have protests that are going on? That there's a lot of people that are against the Iran war. You would think that people on the left, especially the huge wave of people that were coming in here earlier, would be against that. But you don't see people out there protesting against it because they're not getting paid. So, Kevin, that's exactly right. Have I watched MS Fox before? Are you talking about MSNBC or Fox? I'm not sure what you mean, Bethany, on that
Minnesota safer. But this is not isolated to just Illinois and Minnesota. Inside detention centers across the country, the suffering continues. Detainees report physical and sexual abuse, medical neglect, and pressure to self-deport. On top of that brutality, Kristi Noem is misusing funds to buy herself private jets and enrich her associates. Kristi Noem is testifying in the House Judiciary Committee today, but she must come before this committee to explain the rampant corruption and waste within her agency. DHS is out of control. There is no congressional oversight. I was denied entrance to ICE facilities twice in Illinois. There's no accountability. Secretary Noem has still not appeared before this committee, nor has she responded in a substantive manner to more than 12 letters I've sent her. There are no consequences. Noem is still the leader of DHS despite regularly breaking the law and abusing her authority. Secretary Noem must answer for her wrongdoing. For Jaime, my State of the Union guest, who raises his little sister after his father was coerced into self-deportation. For Chicagoan Marimar Martinez, who was shot 5 times. For my constituent Evelyn, an 18-year-old U.S. citizen who was wrongfully detained by ICE. For Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, and all the other victims of ICE and CBP. For the American people. It's for all those reasons that, Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of House Rule 11, I move to subpoena Kristi Noem to testify before the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. This is for every family impacted by Kristi Noem's terror campaign. They demand answers, and so do I.
A motion has been made. The committee will hold this motion in abeyance until the end of today's hearing. The committee will now proceed with today's hearing, and I want to remind everyone, I believe Kristi Noem's testifying in front of the Homeland Security Committee in the House today after testifying in the Senate yesterday. Chair, before I recognize Mr. Cloud, I believe Mr. Higgins has a UC.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an interview from 2024, December 2024, the Minnesota Star Tribune with Governor Walz, noting the federal investigation into the Early Intensive Developmental and Behavioral Intervention Program, the EIDBI program serving autism patients since its first year of inception in 2017, growing from 1.7 million per year to over 400 million per year. Unanimous consent.
Yes, sir. Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Cloud from Texas.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. This hearing was designed to be a hearing looking into the massive expansion of some of the social programs and the fraud that was contained therein. But Reverend Tolgard, I was struck by part of your opening statement because you invoked Matthew 25, and that's a scripture we see tossed around a lot up here, but often without context. And so I went and got my Bible and thought we'd dig into Matthew 25 for a minute. The scripture you invoked was
let's try and
Matthew
get to
25,
200 likes.
35 through 40. It ends with this. It says, "Then the righteous will answer to him, Lord, when did we see you hungry?"
Let's try and get to 200 likes, and also do me a huge favor. And you can double click the screen if you haven't already. That will like the video. And also, if you hold it down, the menu will pop up. You can share this stream with others that you may know to try and get more people in here.
Feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? And when did we And when did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? And the king will answer to them, truly I say to you, to the extent that you did to one of those brothers of mine,
Thank you,
even least
Heather,
of
for
them,
the
you did this to me. I would ask you, who's the you in that passage?
Thank you for your question. You, meaning all of us, the followers of Christ.
Followers of Christ, right. In Matthew 24:3, it says, after Jesus was sitting on the Mountain of Olives and the disciples came to him privately, and then they asked him, that began this whole chapter. Now, what Christ didn't say was to lobby your government. He said, if you have, you give. That's the general biblical principle here.
I like where this is going.
2 Corinthians chapter 9 gives us probably the best scriptural understanding of what charity is. It says, each of you should give what you've decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly, under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Would you say that taxes are under compulsion?
Boom. Great question, you bitch.
Taxes are not my area of expertise.
Of course they're not.
But are they given under compulsion? Do you pay your taxes?
As a U.S. citizen, I pay my taxes.
Yes,
as we all
because
do.
what happens if you don't?
We
go to jail?
Don't have the services that we need to support our.
What happens to you personally if you don't pay your taxes?
You get in trouble.
You get in trouble. I would say that's under compulsion. So if we're talking about what charity is, I'm always amazed in D.C. how much of we get to define our personal worth as a politician or statesman or whatever you want to call us by how much of other people's money we give away.
Exactly.
And so there's certainly a place for a social safety net potentially, but the idea that Matthew 25 is kind of used as a blanket statement. As a matter of fact, the parable that he gives right before that scripture that you go into is the parable of the talents, where you see someone, a business owner, go away and he leaves 3 employees in charge and gives them each a bit of investment. And 2 of them turn their investment into a profit, and one that turns it not into a profit, he does nothing with it, just sits on it. What does he call him?
You should know.
You're a pastor, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I am, sir.
Why don't you know this?
He calls him a wicked and a lazy servant. And so, scripturally speaking,
this is what I'm talking
God expects us
about.
to
She's
do
a
something with
scumbag.
what he's given us. Now, Romans 13 talks about the purpose of government. Scripture is replete with, there's different institutions that each have a different thing. The primary job of raising our kids and taking care of our families in the institution of the family. The government has a different one. It says, for the one in the authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid. For the rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants to bring agent of wrath on the wrongdoer. Would you say that someone who commits fraud is doing wrong?
We all are against fraud.
Right. Is fraud theft? Would you agree that that's theft?
Yes.
As the 8th commandment says, thou shalt not steal. Would you recommend that someone in your church
Because this
go into debt
woman is a
to
hypocrite.
give an offering in your church?
No.
Okay, so we have a massive program of fraud that's being paid for by taxpayers, and it's not really us paying it, it's really our kids and our grandkids that are paying it. And yet we continue to see this massive expansion, all under the taken out of context of what charity is being defined as. It's interesting, I find it odd that the left continues to bring up Matthew 25, because at the very beginning of that, right before he goes in that scripture that we talked with, it says, Matthew 25:32, all the nations will be gathered to him, and he will separate the people from one another as sheep and goats. He will put the sheep on his right and his goats on the left. And the king will say to those on his right, come in, you are blessed of the Father, take your inheritance to the kingdom. And those on his left, he will say, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. So I would caution those who begin to use Matthew 25 to do so in the proper context, understanding that we have multiple biblical institutions and they each have a purpose.
The context here is vast.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit the entirety of Matthew 25 into the record.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I also have a unanimous consent item.
Without object, does anyone object to?
Thank you. It's a Huffington Post
I hadn't
article.
recognized you yet, Mr. Does anybody object to Mr. Cloud? Without objection, so ordered.
You look on her
Now I'll
face, too,
recognize
is
Ms.
priceless
Randall.
because she
Thank
just
you,
looked like
Mr.
an
Comer.
idiot.
I'd like to enter into the record an article from the Huffington Post yesterday. Troops being told Trump's been anointed by Jesus to cause Armageddon in Iran.
Without objection, so ordered.
What?
Well, we do want it. Let's recognize Mr.
What-
Connor,
what
then
is
I'll
that?
get Mr. Waukesha. Mr. Connor from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Walz, when I went to Minneapolis and was at Alex Preddy's memorial, I was struck that by the people there. I expected a lot of folks who were immigrants, and I expected or folks who were children of immigrants who looked brown like me. And there at the memorial were fourth and fifth generation Minnesotans, most of them white Americans, talking about how they faced tyranny, how when they go to church they were being followed by ICE agents. When they'd go to give a meal to an immigrant, they were being followed by agents.
Okay, let's. So we had a bunch of freaks that were in the chat, and I think what happened is the algorithm just put it out to virtually everybody on the planet, seemingly. Now we're back to where we want to be, and I don't want to see. James, thank you for the sub. I don't want to see us arguing within the chat, especially those who I believe are part of this community and are going to be regulars and things like that. Let's just agree that when it comes to these churches are getting taxpayer funded in order to give money and food and services to people that are here illegally. If you want to do that as a church, that's perfectly fine for you to do that. That's your prerogative. But don't accept money, which a lot of these churches do. It's not a dispute. A lot of these churches take in money from government funds, which is from the U.S. taxpayer, and then they hand it out. This is how they pay their salaries. This is how a lot of these churches make money. And a lot of them, both churches and Jewish organizations, by the way, were helping a lot of these people come into the country illegally. So, the bottom line is that person or that woman who's the pastor, she's trying to she made it about religion. But we have to, and she used a passage, I don't remember what it was. And so this guy basically slams her back and says, well, this passage means it should be from your own money, not from the taxpayer money. And he made a brilliant point. My point is, look, we cannot be fighting with each other. Once again, we are U.S. taxpayers. We are the middle class. Our money should not be going to people who do not deserve it. Period. That's not even arguable. And so we need to not stop fighting amongst ourselves, because that's what all these assholes want us to do.
I just had so much hope for our country seeing them there. And I want to thank Minnesota, as a Californian, as someone who grew up in Pennsylvania, as an American, for their character, for their courage, for what they have modeled in a multiracial democracy. And my question for you, having served as a congressman, a governor, what is it about Minnesota that we can learn? What is it that leads to this kind of inclusive feeling about immigrants in our nation?
Well, thank you, Congressman,
Armando,
and thanks for your work on many
sub.
fronts. Look, I think Reverend Tolgard summed it up in getting at the heart of this. It's about the neighborliness and the care. And left to our own devices, I'm going to make the case, Minnesota, and by the way, I would remind folks, states have to balance their budgets. We're AAA bond rated, one of the states that's ranked the highest. We have a surplus, and we also have the highest rainy day funds, one of the strongest protections. So we understand fiscal responsibility, but we also understand this caring, this neighborliness. People saw their neighbor. I believe our politics can change with that idea of what the next door neighbor looks like. Now, I will have to tell you, Mr. Khanna, I was deeply concerned last year when the Vice President of the United States mentioned he can understand why people wouldn't want to live by somebody
Randy, thank you for
who's
the
not
sub.
like them, which seems to go against our entire ethos in Minnesota, whether it was the first wave of Norwegian and Swedish immigrants that came to Minnesota, German immigrants like my family, or whether it was Hmong coming after the Vietnam War, or Somali and other East African immigrants to our country. And I think it's this sense of working together. There's a reason that we rank at the top in healthcare. We rank at the top in personal incomes. We rank near the top in home ownership. We rank near the top in happiness. Because this idea that we're all in it together and that we believe everybody should have a chance. So I think it's an ethos, and it gets into our politics. On the secular side, I believe as an elected official that I shouldn't give a sermon, but I should attempt to live one. And one of our politicians, Paul Wellstone, talked about we all do better when we all do better. and that's what we do. And I know that is true to a certain degree in other states, but I see folks making the claim that, well, you wouldn't have any fraud if you just cut all these programs, if you just zeroed them out. That is true. If we did not provide food for our children, no one would steal from that program. But there would also be.
But you have a responsibility to pay attention to that program, that fraud doesn't take place. You have a responsibility to the taxpayer that their money doesn't get wasted. You have a responsibility to take ownership of fraud and mistakes and accounting errors and problems with it. So you don't get to just let it go and have it wasted in the tunes of $300 million or more. And we're going to see this. I don't know if we're going to get to it tonight because this is long testimony, but it's hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud.
A lot of hungry children. And what I'm asking for and acknowledging the accountability, we need to put program integrity in. So I think it's a neighborliness. I think it's a historical point about caring for your own. And I think it's a clear understanding that if your neighbor does better, you're going to do better.
Well, thank you, Governor. And obviously, fraud matters and budgets matter, but what really matters right now in this country are values. And I really appreciate your sharing that. Attorney General Ellison.
It's good to know that Heather and Rogie are drinking during the stream. Cheers. Now I want to go grab a beer.
Brief time I have, I just want to be clear about Somali Americans, because when I was growing up as an Indian American,
I theorized. If you're talking about the lobster and steak and all that stuff, if that's what you're talking about, and the crab legs, I agree with you on that. That's a problem. I don't mind the people in the military being treated well, because it's obviously not a very good or a difficult job. However, if that is true, that is a problem. I mean, if you're having it here and there or something like that, and it's a special occasion, totally understand. But I agree with you on that. That is, and I've only sort of read a little bit about the stories on what's going on with that. But yeah, that is unusual. That is strange. And no, I would not agree like that's okay. And once again, let me clarify. I'm not happy with everything that Trump is doing right now. So I'm somebody who, again, I am the American taxpayer. I'm on my team. I'm on the team of all of you that are American taxpayers. I'm not on the team of either Republican or Democrat, because right now it's all a uniparty. And I think all of us are smart enough to know that they all work together against us. And that's where we need to be, is all unified against the billionaire class, the Epstein class, the billionaires that are controlling the politicians. So let me be clear on that. Yeah, if there's waste and fraud and there's unusual stuff going on, I'm not okay with that. I will not defend right or left when it comes to that shit.
American, anytime someone who was of Indian origin did something wrong, every Indian American was concerned. And I don't think people understand that. If you aren't a minority, how that makes you feel. I understand there were 80 or 90 people who were Somali Americans who were involved in this, but there are 100,000 Somali Americans at least in Minnesota. And statistically, from all the studies I've seen, it is just factually untrue that Somali Minnesotans or Somali Americans commit more fraud than white Americans or Indian Americans or other Americans. And could you just speak to this, because it is so dangerous? And I don't even think on the other side people are doing that on purpose. But if you aren't an immigrant, if you have...
And I like Ro Khanna, and and the only reason I like him is because him and Massey are the ones who had to put the law in place in order to get the Epstein files that came out. But him and the other Indian who are in U.S. government, not for nothing. If you go to India, name me, and anyone in the chat, name me how many white Americans are in politics or in office in India. Just name me one.
Haven't lived that, or a child of immigrants, you don't know what that makes you feel. And can you talk about the Somali experience in Minnesota?
The reality is the Somali community in Minnesota has brought great things to our state. They have opened businesses. They've gotten professional degrees. They are great neighbors who volunteer and help their neighbors. They have been a benefit to our state. If you pick out a few people who've done wrong, sure, you can do that, but I can guarantee you can do that in any ethnic group at all in the state of Minnesota or anywhere in America.
Thank you. Thank you both.
All right, before I recognize Mr. Higgins,
Sonny,
I'll
thank you for the
recognize Mr.
sub.
Walkinshaw for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I just wanted to make a quick correction. You said Secretary Noem is before the Homeland Security Committee today. That's not true. I'm a member of the committee. She was with us a couple months ago, but she's not scheduled. With that, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a September 22nd, 2025 article from Reuters titled "Trump Aide Homan Accepted $50,000 in Bribery Sting Operation," which shows the Trump administration is willing to cover up blatant corruption of its officials.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Higgins for Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, ma'am, thank you for being here today.
At least I don't sound like this guy.
Governor, when you took office, this
guy sounds like he's drinking.
Had already begun. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's accurate, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Higgins.
So what we're trying to get our heads wrapped around here as a nation, and we're doing our best as a committee, I'm quite certain on both sides, to just sort of focus our attention on what needs to be focused on. You had massive fraud in the state of Minnesota. And when we started looking into waste, fraud, abuse, and theft across the country, Minnesota surfaced as a wow moment for the entire country. So naturally, we look as a citizenry to, well, who's in charge there? And my old friend, Governor Walz, is in charge. And the truth is fraud had begun before you.
Randy, thanks for the sub. Sometimes what happens is the algorithm pushes it out to a lot of people, and then it settles down, and then more level-headed people come in here. But I don't have a problem with Democrats and Republicans coming in. I think now that we have to have both coming in, because we all have to work together against the government that's working against us. So to me, as long as we're all level-headed and not nuts and picking one side or the other and saying it's not a football game. We're not playing, it's not the Super Bowl where it's one team against the other team. From the standpoint of Republicans and Democrats, it's us, the American taxpayer, against the billionaires that are trying to basically use us as batteries, take our taxpayer money to make themselves more rich and fund their lifestyles. That's what's going on in the world, and we all need to wake up to that. Otherwise, we're just going to keep living our lives the way it is right now.
Before you took office. So it's a reasonable question, Governor. What you're noted in many interviews, I'm not going to go through them ad nauseum. You were aware of this level of fraud and investigations, and yet it seems like nothing was done until the Trump administration reestablished itself in a second term, and we began broad investigations.
See, this Higgins guy is wrong about that. It was Nick Shirley. Again, this was brought up many years ago. So for him to say it's Trump did it, it's not necessarily true.
The wage, fraud, abuse, and theft, and Minnesota popped.
It was a 20-year-old kid that figured this out.
Would you please, I just give you a minute to respond?
Yeah.
Why didn't you do something sooner? I know some people were put in jail. I know there were investigations, but there was billions and billions and billions of dollars being stolen from a pretty concentrated demographic in your community. And this demographic is a significant political supporter for you and your party, good sir. So I just ask you, please explain.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Higgins, and I appreciate your question in good faith on this. First of all, the issue of billions, and I'll keep saying this, $1 is too many. That number got thrown around. There's nothing behind it, but I will acknowledge $1 is too much. I will also note the characterization.
I would say it's low. I would say it's slow, but continue.
Well, there's nothing to support that, but look, we will pursue it and assume that that's the case. We will still make the changes we need to make. The characterization that nothing happened until the Trump administration came in is simply not true. We worked with them in the first administration where USDA didn't take action, and I think that's documented. The fact is, starting in 2019, I went to the legislature asking for—
But you didn't pause payments, Governor.
The pausing payments—
And the criminal investigation, which I'm running out of time, I want to jump to. The way America sees this, Governor Walz, respectfully, sir, is that this money just continued to flow. There was a high awareness of this waste, fraud, abuse, and theft, like organized crime level theft, and it seemed to be slow rolled, and nobody stopped the money from rolling in. And the money's gone, been remitted overseas. Attorney General Ellison, you stated in your opening statement that you sort of—
Rogie, pace yourself. You got to save it for Friday because you're going to come here on Friday when we do the live stream. I'll probably be drinking too. So
you stated that your office only has direct jurisdiction over Medicaid fraud. Did you say that in your opening statement? Okay, well, you seem to indicate that you don't have, like, criminal authority, but you do, don't you? Under your own law, you have authority if the county district attorney asks you to get involved, or if the governor asks you to get involved, then your office can take lead on any criminal investigation, specifically if you have particular staffing and capabilities within your office, because it's statewide, to look into organized crime. Is that not correct?
same time, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, so you have the authority to lead your state's effort to respond to this massive fraud at the state level from within the healthcare realm, where government money is being stolen at very, very high levels, unprecedented levels in your state. Are you leading that effort for the state of Minnesota?
It's one big club and we ain't in it.
You're addressing it. Are you leading it? Are you leading the effort?
We are leading the effort to prosecute Medicaid fraud in Minnesota.
I'm not talking about Medicaid fraud. Don't hide behind that. You have the authority to prosecute anything criminally that the governor asks you to. And this thing is big.
Damn, Mr. Higgins is getting very, very angry right now.
Giving you an opportunity, sir. Are you leading the criminal investigative effort into this massive fraud across the board in the healthcare spectrum in the state of Minnesota or not?
We are following the law. And
you are not leading. You're not leading. I'm going to say, Mr. Chairman, that the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota should resign. I yield.
Thank you. Gentleman,
Mr. Higgins is actually a badass.
Before I recognize Mr. Frost, I want to, Mr. Waukesha, you were right. She's not testifying in Homeland Security. Christy Noem's testifying.
Higgins was a sheriff in Louisiana, and he was criticized for doing this this video with all of his people in the back and dogs and cop cars and everything, and basically saying that if you are a gangbanger in my town or wherever in county, we're going to hunt you down and kill you, something to that effect. And of course, he took criticism for it. But he, at the same time, there were a lot of people that were praising him for, essentially saying we're going to come after you. But yeah, he's a decent guy. I mean, but again, these guys get sucked into the politics, and they, you could, I guess, maybe call it a show. But at least when he was a sheriff, he was doing something when he was a sheriff in Louisiana.
And judiciary. I knew she was here somewhere today, so you were right. I misstated the wrong committee. Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost from Florida.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I have unanimous consent called Fraud Focus. Why is Trump grant?
I think, Rogie, in the community tab, you can post to the community tab, and you can post a photo there. Try that, because I don't think anybody's done it yet. If you're, I don't know if you have to be subscribed or not, but give that a try and see if you can post a photo there.
Clemency to convicted fraudsters.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you all for being here. The whole world has witnessed unprecedented and extreme immigration enforcement tactics this year in Minnesota. After the murder of Renee Nicole Good and before the murder of Alex Preddy, President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that, quote, "The day of reckoning and retribution is coming."
Under the community
Governor
tab.
Walz, the dictionary defines retribution as punishment inflicted on someone as vengeance for a wrong or criminal act. Based on what we've seen play out in Minneapolis, what is the problem with the President of the United States directing agents to carry out retribution?
Well, yeah, thank you. And this is certainly troubling because under the guise of fraud, which we all want to tackle, we were subject to, as you saw, the largest invasion of a state by the federal government, I don't know, in certainly any of our lifetimes. And that infliction, to me, we're trying to figure it out. Look, we'll acknowledge, and we're fixing it in Minnesota, but I'm telling you, each year you're going to go back to your state, and if some of you think you want to be governor, you're going to deal with this. And these folks keep moving. The problem is, Congressman, this was about retribution. This was about singling out Minnesota. And I think, I'm going to just name it, I think it's singling out because our state works and it provides things for people.
Yeah,
and
Robert,
we care
that's
and we
true.
mind our own business and we respect our neighbors. And this retribution had nothing to do with getting the worst of the worst. We know that. It had nothing to do with stopping fraud. And we were subject, we being Minnesotans, for over 10 weeks. And I want to note, just before, and I'll yield back on this, Congressman.
No,
I think
let's
this
get
is
to
important
200
note.
likes, everybody.
The gentleman from Illinois noted that Midway Blitz, the damage it did to Chicago. There were 500 agents on the ground in Chicago. Kristi Noem testified yesterday there's still 650 in Minnesota. It is not over. This is not ancient news. This is not looking like everybody moved on. Minnesotans are still experiencing this.
It's bad for our communities and makes our people less safe. It's terrorizing our streets. Yes. Reverend, what has been happening in your community when individuals try to record federal agents?
Thank you for your question. Individuals who have tried to record federal agents have been told they cannot. They have been asked for taken pictures of their license plates. They have been followed. They have been subject to fear intimidation tactics by ICE agents.
And one of the only reasons that really the world knows about what's going on in Minnesota is because of our Constitution and the right to be able to record law enforcement and federal agents. Those videos and the videotapes have been in part the reason why we know what's going on. Trump administration officials have suggested that observing or identifying federal agents is, quote, doxing or, quote, assault. We know federal agents have followed observers to their homes. We know protesters have been pepper sprayed. We know people have been violently detained who were filming them without bystanders having cameras who know how the murders of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy by ICE agents would have been handled by this administration. They have already tried to lie about these murders, even with footage. After Alex Preddy was murdered, Stephen Miller said he was, quote, a domestic terrorist who tried to, quote, assassinate federal law enforcement. Kristi Noem said that he committed an act of domestic terrorism. And the President of the United States said that he was an agitator and perhaps an insurrectionist. Reverend, the last thing I want to get to that I think is really important. I grew up in the church, and I used to wear one of the "What Would Jesus Do?"
Yeah, Sonny, these guys they're all trying to think of another example that they continue to use where they keep saying the same thing over and over again and it's not true. I'll think of it in a minute. But what they keep using, like the Preddy deal and Nicole Good, they keep bringing that up over and over and over again, saying that it was just an outright murder. And if you look at the details, Preddy was carrying a gun around. You've come to find out that this guy quit his job so he can go around and protest. He spit at agents the day before or a week before, several days before. He kicked a vehicle and knocked the taillight off the vehicle. It's all on video. So he was extremely aggressive. And he had a SIG P230 handgun with a red dot scope on it, and I believe I don't know whether it was an extended magazine, but he had a gun on him both times. And then Nicole Good, when we were arguing with people earlier, she turned her car into the ICE agent. The ICE agent feared for his life. And as unfortunate as it was still considered a clean shoot. But people say that he shot through the side window when there's clearly a bullet hole. If you look at the photos, there's a bullet hole in the windshield. But what these Democrats are doing, and again, I'm not trying to make it about Republicans or Democrats, but you see what's happening here, is that he's using those two incidents to make it seem as if ICE is going out of its way to murder people. That's how they're trying to formulate this.
Bracelets, mainly because I used to curse a little too much when I was little, and then I would snap myself when I cursed. Either way, nowadays, I think less about what would Jesus do, and I think more about what would happen to Jesus.
And then when people say the tires are turned and the wheel was turned, the ICE agent, when a car is coming at them or any car for any cop and for any matter, and there's plenty of cops that have been run over and killed by people in vehicles, they're not paying attention to where the tires are turned. Okay, so what you'll see is you'll just start seeing these ridiculous things that are coming in, like the wheel was turned a certain way, the tires were turned a certain way. You think the ICE agent's going down there and going, I wonder where the tires are turned. All he knows is that an SUV is coming his way and it's considered a deadly weapon. And this is basic law. This is basic knowledge when it comes to federal agents and following the law and when a shoot is a clean shoot and not a clean shoot.
In this country. And I just wanted to give you a moment to talk about what you think would happen to refugees Mary and Joseph as they come to our border. Would they be separated from their child? I mean, what does this look like?
Such a good point, Congressman. And yes, Jesus was himself a refugee, as were his parents. And yes, I fear that they too would have experienced the harm and cruel treatment that Minnesota.
I mean, if any of these protesters were just sitting on the sidelines, standing on the sidewalk, not getting involved and they are purposefully agitating. They're getting paid to agitate. Like I said earlier, you don't see any protests in the street now for the Iran war because they're not getting paid. But these agitators, they have admitted over and over and over again that they're paid to be there, paid agitators. They're there to get in the way of ICE physically. They're ramming ICE vehicles with their vehicles. They are physically getting into altercations, and they're being told by the people that are leading them that the best thing for you to do is to get into an altercation so you do get hurt. That way that they could use it against the ICE agents and against the administration. So they're being told to do these things. And once again, they're getting paid to do this stuff. This isn't in dispute. It's not arguable. These are facts. They're not made up. And people are just getting into an emotional thing about it and thinking that, ICE is bad and that's that. And it's just not true.
Have been experiencing at the hands of our government.
What do you say to the people who hide behind the Bible and wrap themselves in the flag to say that what is going on in our country right now with ICE, terrorizing our communities, ripping our neighbors, ripping families apart? What would you say to people like that?
Yeah, the FBI has found, they haven't released the documentation yet, but they said they were all funded, and which I find also very frustrating that they haven't released the names of the organizations that are funding these. But the FBI has made it more than clear that they are funded.
I think, again, Matthew 25, where are we in this moment? It should be on the side of the least, the widow, the orphan, the hungry, the homeless, and that as people of faith and moral conscience, history will tell what side we stood on, but our actions today will show true love of neighbor.
Thank you. I yield back.
Yields back. Before I recognize Ms. Mace, Mr. Grofman, I believe, has a UC.
Yeah, I'd like to submit for the record something here.
Hit the button.
I'd like to submit for the record something called Minnesota Financial and Compliance Report on Federally Assisted Programs for the year ending June 30th, 2024.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for being here today. Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison, you have presided over one of the worst government fraud scandals in American history. This was money intended to feed hungry children, help kids with autism, provide food and shelter and health care to the needy, and more. You both allowed billions in these American taxpayer dollars to be pillaged and plundered by Somali pirates. You knew this was happening. You chose to do nothing about it, and in some cases, you even enabled it. Attorney General Ellison, you even profited from this fraud by taking campaign donations from these Somalians after pledging to help quash the investigation into them. I find your behavior.
No, the constitutional lawyers have said that they don't fall under the same protection as actual U.S. citizens do.
Despicable. My questions this morning, my first go to Governor Walz, and I hope you learned some lessons from your last hearing with me on the Oversight Committee. Have you learned anything since
I did, that if I didn't speak up, 2 of my people would be dead, Congresswoman, and I warned you.
Okay, Governor Walz, what is a woman? Have you learned that lesson?
Beautiful.
Do you know what a woman is?
I'm the governor of Minnesota, Congresswoman.
Do you know what a
I'm not
woman
here
is?
to be your prop for your obsession.
So
I
if you
taught middle
can't
school, your
define what a
obsession.
woman is, you certainly can't define what fraud is. If you can't even define what a woman is, you can't define fraud. How much money was spent on autism in Minnesota in 2017, Governor?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, Congresswoman.
Did you prepare for this hearing today? Did you
I
do
did.
any preparation
I take
for this hearing
Congress
today?
seriously.
And you've seen the numbers about autism fraud in Minnesota. So we're going to do some Minnesota math with you today, okay? Are you ready? How much money was spent on 2017 for autism in Minnesota? How much?
I don't know. I wasn't the governor.
Okay. Did you not just say that you prepared for this hearing today? $1 million, okay? A quick Google search or using your AI could tell you $1 million was spent. How much money was spent on autism in Minnesota in 2020?
Her questions are good. The way she handles the questions are not good. It could have been done in a better way. And this is the same kind of thing with the depositions with the Clintons and with trying to remember who the other person was. I think it was with Leslie Wexner. She did better that way, but here it is sort of badgering. She has all the numbers and the proof beyond any reasonable doubt that there was fraud, and when she goes through the numbers, you can't argue them. But the way that she's doing it is doesn't do her any favors.
I don't have the number in front of me.
Were you governor in 2024?
I was, but I'm not the
Okay,
head
so
of
your excuse before that you didn't know what 2017 autism numbers were because you were not governor, and today you can't answer the numbers about 2024 as governor, and you still said you prepared for this hearing today. It's unbelievable. $343 million was spent in 2024. What percent increase is that from $1 million to $343 million? What percentage increase is that?
I'm not here to be your prop. Go ahead and tell me.
Well, are you governor of Minnesota or not?
Yes, I am. I'm not.
Well, when
I'm not
I'm
a prop
governor of
for a
South
member of
Carolina,
Congress.
you can sure as hell bet that
Let's
I'm
get
going to
to
know the
200
math.
likes.
The math is
Keep asking. We got a lot of
34,200%
people in here. We can get to
an increase
200.
of 343 times what it was in this time period. Do you know the number of children in Minnesota?
I know that Minnesota ranked as a top 3 state for children in the last year.
What is the total population in Minnesota?
5.7 million.
Okay. What is the total population of children in Minnesota?
I don't have the number in front of me right
Are
now.
you governor of Minnesota?
I know 400,000 were cut out of health care last
Okay,
week by
that's
the
not-
actions you made.
Are you governor of Minnesota?
I am.
And you don't know the number of children residing
I don't have
in
the
Minnesota?
specific number. It's 5.7 million.
That's your total
What is
population.
your age? What is the age? 0 to 5?
So Melanie, let me just get this straight. So you're cool with fraud then? You're cool with people taking taxpayer money and giving it to people who don't deserve the money. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. You're totally fine with fraud and taxpayer fraud and hardworking tax-paying Americans that bust their ever-loving ass every single day to make a dollar, and then it gets taken away from them by the U.S. government and given to people who don't belong here and commit fraud and crimes and everything else. You're cool with that. That's what I'm getting from you.
0 to 19?
You have approximately 1.2 million children in Minnesota.
What
I'm not
age?
even governor of South Carolina. Our population in South Carolina is 5.5 million. We have approximately 1.1 million children under the age of 18 in my home state of South Carolina, okay? As governor, I expect you to know this information. Thank God you're not Vice President of the United States. Do you know approximately how many children in Minnesota are autistic or on the spectrum?
No, I don't have that number.
Okay, well, if you take the CDC's roughly 1 in 36 kids are on the spectrum, we're talking about approximately 33,000 kids. In South Carolina, it's about 31,000 or so. What is, do you know what this is per child, spending-wise, in the fraud for autistic kids in Minnesota?
Again, I'm not here to be your prop. Go ahead and tell us.
Is doing Minnesota math a prop? This is math. We're talking about fraud.
Minnesota ranks at the top. Where does South Carolina rank?
We're talking about money.
Where does South Carolina children rank?
So, Michael, you're picking one part of the fraud, and I agree that what's going on in the Persian Gulf is not cool. But you're just picking one side. Once again, it's, you know, and it's hard to have to go over these things a million times when everybody just comes in here later and just automatically assumes things. Any amount of money spent, whether it's in a war in the Middle East that none of us voted for, or fraud in Minnesota, it's wrong. So, yes, I have a problem with both. I have a problem with money going to wars that I didn't vote for and that are supposed to be ended on day one. And I have a problem with fraud being done in states when it comes to this stuff that's going on in Minnesota. So I have a problem with both. I have a problem with any of my money going somewhere where I didn't vote for it or I don't want it to go.
These are my questions for you. It doesn't go the other way around unless we're debating on the debate stage. And we're not.
If you're asking questions about being governor, it does.
I'm asking you questions about being governor of Minnesota, which you can't answer. This is basic math.
Okay, sir, you are spamming Sir Jibs a lot. So again, if you guys just want to cause problems, I will put you out there.
You can't even answer. Do you even care
prop.
about kids in Minnesota?
They rank near the top in every category. My children are fed. My children are housed. My children have health
getting the
care.
services they need in
My
Minnesota.
children have the best schools.
No, you don't. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady yields back.
Mr. Chairman.
Who's, Ms. Bobert? Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Mr. Mace.
May I make my two motions?
Proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
James.
Chairman, I move that the committee issue a subpoena to the Honorable Pamela Jo Bondi to appear before the committee for a deposition regarding the department's handling of the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and his associates and compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
A motion has been made. The committee will hold this motion in abeyance until the end of today's hearing. The committee will now proceed with today's hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee issue a subpoena to the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights for the awards and settlements paid pursuant to Section 415 of the Congressional Accountability Act prior to December 12, 2018, with only redactions allowable for the personally identifiable information of victims, alleged victims, and witnesses. Thank you, ma'am.
A motion has been made. The committee will hold this motion in abeyance until the end of today's hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, can I have one thing before?
Chair recognizes the ranking member.
Thank you. No, we'd just like to see Mrs. Mace's motions in writing, which would be great.
Now,
trolling and getting trying to derail my live stream and free speech are not the same thing. So if people are going to say that too, that they're going to say trolling is free speech and trying to derail my space, I'll remove you as well.
Before I recognize Ms. Lee, do you have Ms. Randall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a December 11th, 2025 article from The Guardian titled "Somalis Are the Scapegoat. Fear Rises as Trump Targets Minneapolis Community," which describes the Trump administration's xenophobic attacks. Thank you.
Without objection to order. Chair recognizes Ms. Lee from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the past few months, Democrats on this committee and in the Senate have been holding hearings on the unconstitutional actions of the Trump administration. So we've heard from, in that time, whistleblowers, industry experts, and survivors of abuses of federal agents. They spoke about warrantless searches that they have been subjected to, including federal agents bursting into their homes with guns. They spoke about being shot at and dragged out of their cars, and then, being made to look like they were actually the perpetrators. They spoke about federal agents, use of masks in unmarked vehicles, and the
Razor, we
efforts
need
of
to
these
rally
agents to
behind the
hide their
American
identity to escape
taxpayer.
any sort of accountability.
The
And we heard
American,
from
America first.
the brother
No
of
politician
Renee
is going to
Good,
save us.
who was murdered by ICE agents in Minneapolis. That is what oversight looks like. Not 2 hearings on fraud in one single state, which is not even the worst instance of fraud out there, though we all here agree that we should target fraud. Republicans have dragged Governor Walz in again to demonize and target his state because he is a Democratic governor and he is implementing Democratic policies. Republicans took a legitimate investigation and, as per usual, has made it a circus. Now we have just a random guy lurking around child care centers trying to get into buildings with children as the fraud vigilante. The Somali community has been vilified and made to feel unsafe. And federal benefits are being cut to Minnesota and other Democrat-led states. Trump and his administration also used this investigation as a justification for an immigration enforcement push that has created chaos and fueled violence and resulted in the death of American citizens. Reverend Tolgard, as a Minnesotan, do you feel that these oversight hearings and the Trump administration's fixation on fraud in Minnesota has made anyone safer in your state?
No, they have not.
Republicans have been touting alleged fraud in child care centers and the need to protect children. But since the immigration enforcement push, have kids been able to be kids? Have they felt comfortable going to school or playing out in public with each other or with their friends?
They have not been safe. They've not been able to go to school, to be in playgrounds, to be in libraries and places you would normally expect to find them.
Nobody is.
Are you worried about the
today's
long-term
America.
impact of being surrounded by violence and uncertainty, what it could have on these children?
I'm deeply concerned about that, and I know that
everywhere around America, crime is up because crime is not being reported. So those who say no, crime is down, crime is not being reported because of the FBI system, upgrading their system. That's a whole different thing to get into. But a lot of these major cities are not reporting their crime. So they're lying about crime going down when in fact it's not. Washington, D.C. is a perfect example. And Chicago is another example. So this person is saying, oh, well, our kids don't feel safe because of ICE, because of federal agents. This is another bullshit lie.
their teachers and their parents are as well.
You were arrested earlier this year while protesting ICE agents and deportations. Why was it important for you to, and other clergy members, to speak?
Yeah, Trump stopped the crime in D.C., but he also said that he was going to send the National Guard to other cities, and he didn't do it. He promised to do it, but he didn't do it. He also promised that we weren't going to have any foreign wars. We're having a foreign war in Iran. He also said he was going to stop the Ukraine war day one. He didn't do that.
Speak out against Trump's administration's actions in Minnesota and elsewhere.
Thank you for your question. I was arrested along with 99 other faith leaders in Minnesota, many of whom could be here today, and we were compelled to action to stand on the side of the most vulnerable in our communities and those who have been facing enormous cruelty and unfair actions on the hands of ICE, and we needed to stand alongside them, as have many others in our faith traditions.
But I wonder if Maria Tolgard stood, she didn't stand against anybody else that was having crimes committed against them by the Somalis. She didn't stand for those people. She doesn't stand for anybody being abused or hurt. To her, ICE is the Gestapo.
In history, we stand along with that great cloud of witnesses.
I want to thank you
for
coming in today and
200
for, of course, having the courage to stand up to the attacks against your community. This, as we can all see, was never truly about fraud. It is a part of a greater effort by Trump and Republicans to gut social services, roll back civil rights, to villainize and make others out of people who they don't want to have and enjoy the same civil liberties and rights as others in this nation. They want to strip away and have been stripping away healthcare and education, child care funding that millions of people rely on. This investigation and these actions have only been used to harm, not to help people. And rest assured, this will not stop in Minnesota just as it didn't stop in Chicago before that or LA before that. This is a blatant attempt, blatant authoritarian grab that the Trump administration has been persistent in. It will come to all shores if we do not all take a collective stance. But more than that, urging my colleagues in the Republican caucus or conference to take up their job and their task as a co-equal branch of government. We do not serve as the lapdogs, as the cult followers of
Eagle's Nest, laughable critiques of Trump. Iran strikes are long overdue. Since when we had the JCPOA in place by Obama, but then Trump tore it up because Israel wanted him to. So, and they struck him the first time, and now we're striking him again. And why do we need to strike them? They can't reach us with any of their missiles. John Wick, thank you for donating through Super Chat. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. So we know why we're attacking Iran. And then we were first lied to by the administration, saying that we had to do it because they were going to strike us first. And then Rubio said, well, we had to do it because Israel said that they were going to strike first, and we had to strike before Israel. So there's all these different things. So I don't know where you're getting your information from saying it was long overdue, because there was like 15 different reasons for us to do it. But in 2011, Trump, before he ran for office, said that Obama is an idiot if he gets into a war with Iran. He said it multiple times, that it was Obama was going to get into a war with Iran just to get elected because he couldn't negotiate. Look it up. I even have the video. It's because it's out there. So for you to say that's laughable. Okay, that's laughable for you to say something like that.
Donald Trump, of a president. When there are abuses or overreach, it is supposed to be us that takes a stand. And I would hope that at some point in the 119th Congress, some Republican with a gavel will do so. I thank you all for your time, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes
things always
Mr.
change,
Donalds
right?
from Florida.
That's a good reason.
Thank you, Chairman.
Things always
Governor
change.
Walz, when did you first receive notice of potential fraud in
John Wick is
Minnesota's
right.
social services programs?
That's why we did it.
Social service programs in general. We knew that there was issues with the CCAP program as early as 2012, and my first days in office, we started taking action.
But as governor, when were you first notified?
Before I took office.
All right.
The point is, we had the JCPOA in process, so we had inspections, all of that. It pissed off Israel because we had the JCPOA. They didn't want that, and this is a much more detailed, much more complex thing. I mean, if you read there was a report that was done listing all of the different areas that we had to attack, or Israel needed to attack, in order to build the Greater Israel Project. This is Israel's thing. This isn't America's thing. So don't kid yourself.
Governor Walz, former Department of Human Services Commissioner Tony Laurie testified that you were aware in early 2019 of fraud in 2 Department of Human Services administered programs. Is this statement accurate?
Not that I recall. I'm not sure what he's speaking about.
You don't remember this meeting or this notification?
No, not specifically. I don't.
In March of 2019, your Office of Legal Affairs reported $5 to $6 million in alleged child care assistance program fraud. In April 2019, it was also reported that the Department of Human Services lacked proper integrity controls to control fraud. Were you aware of these reports?
Not specific reports, but because of that, my office, we put forward actions to address them, starting in 2019.
Is it correct that your administration was aware of the Feeding Our Future fraud as early as of May of 2020, based upon regular discussions about program irregularities?
I believe that's correct with the agency, the Department of Education, and then going back to USDA.
Then Trump came out today, by the way, and said that Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff told him to do it.
I'm going to go back. Was your office notified of these fraud allegations?
Not me specifically, that they're handled internally in the administration. It happens every day.
Who was notified, Governor Walz?
The the agencies do their work, the commissioners, and then if someone in my office was notified, they let me know. As governor, I make, 50 decisions a day. I said I did this job for 12 years. I make more decisions in a day.
Governor Walz.
So someone was maybe notified, but the agencies are the ones that take the
May I
action.
ask the next question?
Rumor is that the son has disappeared, so they don't know where he's at. I'm assuming he's in hiding because I'm sure they're probably trying to kill him now as well.
We have it under sworn testimony in the Oversight Committee that your former chief of staff was notified directly by these various commissioners about the fraud in Minnesota.
That could be correct.
So are you saying that your chief of staff didn't notify you?
I'm saying I don't recall whether he did at that time or not, but we took action. So I'm assuming when we put our budgets together based on that, we put a package together for that legislative.
Yeah, and the Iranian citizens from, and of course it can't be proven, were rallying against the current regime. So when the U.S. government is saying that they were going to overthrow their government, it looks as if the people are actually, because of what's going on in Iran, are actually rallying for their own current government.
Let's talk about budgets, Governor Walz. Feeding Our Future went from $307,000 in 2018 to $199 million in 2021. Are you aware of this increase in budgetary costs from Feeding Our Future?
Not specifically, but I know it.
So for those of you that are in here, be sure to subscribe. And what I'll do tomorrow is I will show you the videos and the it's called the Clean Break Memo, and I'll go over the Clean Break Memo, and I'll also go over a video. One of the generals, I can't remember off the top of my head, but he had gone into the Pentagon and they had told him the exact same. We were going into Syria, we were going into Iraq, we were going into Libya, we were going into, and then the very last one was Iran. And so it listed off all of the countries, and I'll get into the details of who it was specifically who wrote the Clean Break Memo. And then I'll show you the video from the general. But this was all pre-planned. And again, this has to do with what's called the Greater Israel Project. And so this is about Israel becoming a superpower in the Middle East. They can't do it on their own. They need the United States in order to do it. And we have a lot of money from AIPAC that's going to a lot of these politicians. That is why Thomas Massie is hated so much by Trump, because he and Ro Khanna and a couple of the others, Rhonda, thanks for the sub. That's why these people get so pissed at Massie, because Massie's not accepting that money. And so it's much more complicated to go over in this, because obviously we're looking at Walz, but I'll go over that tomorrow and go through all of those things. But this is much more complicated. We're not doing that. This is 40 years that we've been saying, and Netanyahu's been saying, okay? Do any of you that are saying that there was going to be an attack, do you not remember Netanyahu getting in front of Congress 30, 40 years ago saying that Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon tomorrow? Thanks, Lionel, for the sub. He kept saying over and over and over again, Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon in like 5 days or 2 months or this or that. He kept saying that, 30, 40 years ago. When I was a kid, he was saying this. And now fast forward to now, he's going to have a nuclear weapon. So they keep repeating the same story again and again. But when you culminate it with the Clean Break Memo and everything else, it becomes way more obvious of what's going on.
Increase during the pandemic.
The housing stabilization services went from $27 million in 2021 to $105 million in 2024. Are you aware of this increase, Governor Walz?
Not specifically, but I know it increased.
Autism centers went from $24 million in 2019 to $342 million in 2024. Are you aware of that?
Not specifically again, but yes, we know the budget's increased.
Integrated community supports went from $4.6 million in 2021 to $170 million in 2024. Are you aware of that?
Again, not specifically on the numbers, but It's the budget.
Governor Walz, you have to submit a budget to your legislature every single year, like every governor has to do. If you're not aware of these increases, what was your office
Everyone
doing?
is balanced. My budget is about $72 billion. It involves 23 agencies.
Florida's
6
budget's
million people.
$115 billion, sir. But what were you doing if you're seeing program increases like this amid allegations of fraud in your state?
Action was being taken on these starting back in 2019. If it's CCAP.
Can you describe the action that was taken in 2019?
Sure. In the 2019, I'll go to the first things that we did on child care assistance. We lowered the standards on proof of administrative fraud disqualification.
Whoa, you lowered the standards?
We lowered the standards for proof of administrative fraud. The standards where we had to prove it were so high it was impossible to try and do it. So we lowered what it took to show that
Come on,
fraud was
200
happening.
likes.
And what did you do with the results of lowering the standards to prove
Let's go.
fraud?
Just all you have to do is double
Put
click
79
the
people in
screen.
prison.
It's not that
and-
hard.
But Governor Walz,
Continue
the
to
fraud
prosecute.
continued to increase. It increased under your tenure. Do you acknowledge that?
Did the numbers increase? Yes. And I tell you, when you catch people and prosecute them, it
Come on, 10
shows
more
up
to
that the
go.
fraud increase. I would tell you, Congressman,
But
just because you're not hearing about fraud doesn't mean it's not
I got 50
happening.
seconds, Governor, and I don't want to get into a fight with you, but
Jason,
let me move
thanks for the
quickly
sub.
to the Lieutenant Governor. Peggy Flanagan's your Lieutenant Governor, is that correct?
That is correct.
Does the Lieutenant Governor go on the ticket with you, or are they elected by themselves on a ballot in the state of Minnesota?
It's on a ticket.
It's on a ticket. Peggy Flanagan essentially works for you.
She has an independent office. She's a constitutional officer. She's on the ticket, but she is independent as a constitutional
You
officer.
could ask for her resignation at any time, is that correct? That's typically how it works with lieutenant governors.
Yeah, but she's a constitutional officer. I don't believe that's happened in Minnesota.
Peggy Flanagan is, there are accusations that she was intimidating whistleblowers. There was a meeting on April 12th of 2024 where she went on stage and publicly denounced whistleblowers in the state of Minnesota, calling them losers in their mother's basements. Is this the type of treatment that your administration allows for whistleblowers in Minnesota?
I'm not familiar
Are
with
you
that.
aware of any intimidation of whistleblowers?
Okay, once again, everybody should be held accountable. It doesn't matter who they are. Everyone. Okay, that includes Trump, that includes Biden, that includes anybody on either side. This is not a team sport. This is not a football game, everybody. It's not bread and circuses. Okay, this is about what is right and what is wrong. So this is a live stream about holding people accountable. And by the way, telling the truth to the best of our ability. Some people might get certain things wrong. Facts might be wrong, whatever. But telling the truth and not withholding because it might offend somebody. So if you talk about the Greater Israel Project, is that anti-Semitic, or is it actually true when you back it up with facts and history, historical references, et cetera, et cetera? No, it's just factual information. It's just some people don't want you talking about it because they don't want you knowing what's going on. So we're here about this stream, for those of you that are here, is talking about the truth, whether people like it or not. That's really the bottom line. And I'm not going to hold back to, and not hurt somebody's feelings if I'm going to say something. I'm not going to go outright calling people names and using racial slurs or any of that kind of shit, because that's stupid. That doesn't solve any problems. But we're here to talk about the truth. So yes, if somebody is abusing children, doesn't matter what side, they all need to be held accountable.
Whistleblowers in the state of Minnesota.
Which
There are 30 whistleblowers who have given letters to this committee on the record saying that they have been subject to intimidation by your administration because they were trying to stop the fraud in Minnesota.
I encourage them to go to the OLA and the independent sources in Minnesota that are
The
open to do
OLA,
that.
you're the governor.
No, the OLA is the independent
But sir,
office of
you're the
legislative
governor.
audit.
Why don't you take responsibility for what's going on in your state?
We do take responsibility. None of those people, I'm telling you, I have no knowledge.
But you
of
lost
coming-
billions of dollars of American taxpayer money in the process, Governor Walz.
We prosecuted these
Thank you
people,
for
Congressman. I
these
think
sub. I
Florida
appreciate
has
it.
fraud.
I would argue that the prosecutions have largely come from the federal offices
That's
as
not how
opposed to the
this
state
works.
offices.
You know that we refer
What
them
do
to
you
them
mean
with-
that's not how it works? That's
They're
exactly
partners.
how it works.
They're partners. They partner together. Our BCA.
Is the Attorney General allowed to investigate fraud and prosecute fraud in the state of Minnesota without the Department of Justice federally? Are you allowed to do that, Attorney General Ellison?
Yes, and we do prosecute Medicaid. Yes, and we do prosecute Medicaid fraud all the time. We've prosecuted over 300 people.
Apparently not enough, because Minnesota's rife with it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Randall from Washington State.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Governor Walz, Attorney General Ellison, and Reverend Tolgard, for being here to shed light on the impacts of the Trump administration's harmful actions in Minnesota, and frankly, to be pulled into some really ridiculous question lines. The escalation in attacks from this administration on social services programs in democratically led states like Minnesota, on the heels of the big ugly law's billions of dollars of Medicaid cuts last summer, is clearly devastating our communities. Do I believe Congress has a responsibility to reduce opportunities for misuse and fraud where we have seen evidence that it exists? Sure. That's why I introduced the Federal Program Integrity and Fraud Prevention Act, a bipartisan bill that would prevent individuals who have been convicted of fraud from applying for federal contracts. Mr. Chairman, if you are serious about addressing fraud, I'd love to see this committee hold a hearing on my bill, which was developed based on feedback from nonpartisan inspectors general, whose entire job is overseeing the appropriate administration of government programs. And let me remind my friends on the other side.
I don't know how this works where she could just come out and she just randomly speaks. No one, and no certain order for her. So I don't understand what that's all about.
Mississippi, a state with Republican leadership where over $77 million in temporary assistance for needy families funds were misused.
Come on, 10
more likes. One of the perpetrators of that fraud, former NFL quarterback Brett Favre.
Did we hit 200?
Who received $1.1 million from the government for speeches he never made.
Mine hasn't updated yet.
Congressional Republicans' response was to invite Favre to come testify before the Ways and Means Committee about how we should strengthen oversight of federal welfare programs. Because I'm sure he had some good advice about that. Meanwhile, my Republican colleagues are villainizing entire minority populations because of the actions of a few. We have a word for that. I also have a lot of Republican colleagues here who talk about being fiscally responsible and reining in federal spending. Again, I also believe we should be fiscally responsible. But to me, fiscal responsible governing.
The grandstanding annoys me. They ask questions. But to sit there and make a speech that defeats the purpose of having these things.
Means that we invest in transformative universal health care that saves us money in the long term. Child care policies that give the budget back $7 on the dollar spent in long-term costs for the children who benefit. Policies that will actually save our country money in the long run and contribute to strong society and strong economy. Not slashing social services, not defunding hospitals, not eliminating child care programs. Governor Walz, why do you think the Trump administration is so obsessed with fraud in Minnesota when its own agencies have found other states with even worse problems?
You're asking me.
Well, it's a question we're all asking, Congresswoman, and I'd like to say thank you for this. I just want to make sure I go on record, Chairman Comer, in condemning the slurs towards my Somali community that the gentlewoman from South Carolina made. Thank you. Look, Congress, I don't know. I think it's been pretty clear the president does not like me personally. I think he continues to tell lies about our electoral system, claiming that he's won all 3 times when he lost all 3 times. I think he has people around him who were trying to find quotas around immigration, and they saw a perfect storm, if you will, that included some Somali folks and a whole lot. If we're going to condemn folks, there's no Somali folks in the Epstein files, things like that, we know. But I don't know. It's an obsession, and I come back to it again. I think it's because we are so ideologically opposed to making children go hungry, people go unhoused. We invest in education, we invest in research, and we believe everybody has a place. And so I think it's just personal about how we do business.
Thank you so much.
Josh, you haven't subscribed yet?
There are also reports that as many as 50 prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office for Minnesota have quit in the last 12 months. They used to have 70 prosecutors. Now some reports say they have as few as 17. Many of those who left include the very same prosecutors who were prosecuting the Feeding Our Futures fraudsters. How has this flight impacted your efforts to fight fraud in Minnesota?
Well, it's made it very difficult. And I think for all of my friends on the Republican side. We welcomed the Republican folks, the attorneys over at the U.S. Attorney's Office who were good at helping us as partners. We turned this over to them. They prosecuted, they put people in jail. They're not there now. There's nobody doing this. And I will remind this committee, the U.S. attorney was in front of a federal judge yesterday being threatened with jail
Josh.
because of what's going on in that office.
Better
and
late
from my
than never.
perspective, who's prosecuting trafficking, drugs, murder, and fraud?
Thank you for this.
And so we want them. If you could do anything, Chairman, call the president and tell him to put some U.S. attorneys over there to prosecute fraud. I'll sign on with you.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair now recognizes Chairman Burchett from Tennessee.
Say that with disrespect in your voice, Mr. Chairman. Governor, you mentioned that President Trump lost all 3 times. I believe that's an error, and that's a conspiracy theorist. I believe you spoke in error there, but
no, he lost Minnesota all 3 times.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you corrected that.
He doesn't agree with that.
I don't care.
Chair.
We're good. Have you ever used taxpayer funds directly or indirectly to take action against individuals suspected of disclosing potential wrongdoing within a government entity?
I have not.
Well, almost 30 whistleblowers accuse you and your administration of retaliation. Would you say that's a conspiracy then?
That's interesting.
I
didn't
can't
know
speak
that.
to what they said. I can tell you it didn't happen.
Okay. Are you aware of reports alleging state officials have engaged in retaliation against whistleblowers?
No, I'm not. Not specifically, no.
This guy doesn't mess around
You're
either.
not aware of that when 30 have come forward?
I am not. I believe these are internet. We have options. The OLA, we have independent folks that they can come to, and I encourage them. It's against the law in Minnesota. I have executive orders.
It's against the law here, but it doesn't stop it. What actions have you taken to protect whistleblowers in your state,
funny,
sir?
brother.
Has anyone faced consequences for retaliation? If so, who?
Well, in Minnesota, we have nonpartisan office of legislative auditor. We have zero tolerance. The Minnesota Whistleblower Protection
He's
Act
prepared
prohibits
for this question,
retaliation.
wasn't he?
I signed executive order in 2025, added protections. The law explains and clarifies protections around what reports are protected and who can report issues. They're strong. When I was here, I was an advocate for the IGs, and I think that's well known in my 12 years here that we need them.
Okay.
Yeah. John Kennedy. You know, I used to like John Kennedy. I thought some of the things he said were funny, but now, I don't know. I think some of the jokes he makes are kind of cringy, but I mean, I get where you're coming from, Heather, on that one.
Well, a whistleblower told our office that her supervisor at the Minnesota Department of Health and Human Services threatened to make her job difficult, and the supervisor that did that later received a promotion. Would that surprise you, and can you confirm if this account is accurate?
Yeah,
No, I can't confirm it, and I don't make HR decisions, but when I'm being very clear about this, there's a zero tolerance for whistleblower retaliation in Minnesota.
Can you, how can any agency combat fraud when retaliation goes unchecked?
It makes it more difficult. That's why we don't allow it.
Do you think that the fraudsters sent stolen funds to Somali terrorist groups?
Pardon me?
Do you think that any of the Somali folks that received funds sent any of that money to any of the stolen funds to Somali terrorist groups?
Did anybody hear about that, where there were suitcases of cash that were being sent to foreign countries supporting terrorism? Now, I don't know exactly where they went, but there were suitcases full of cash. Amy, thank you for the sub. That were being sent by these Somalis overseas.
There's been reports done and investigations done on this, and I don't believe there's any proof to support that.
Okay. Mr. Attorney General, do you recall a December 2021 meeting with individuals connected to feeding our future, during which you stated there will be cases that I want you to feel free to call me directly, and then I call up and what's the problem? And let me tell you, just letting the inquiry from AG is sometimes enough to make people knock it off.
Congressman, yeah, I was at a meeting like that. Let me just say that I've reported on this numerous times. I've been in front of a committee in the Senate. I'm here today. I was in front of a state House committee. This is a widely discussed matter, and I've been fully transparent. But let me just be clear. These people were fraudsters, as everyone here agrees. They were liars. They lied to me. They lied to courts. They lied to everyone. And I would like you to know that I do meet with community meetings all the time. I mean, it's a regular part of my job. Nothing unusual about me meeting.
Yeah, it is true. There are different rumors, and unfortunately, we're not getting on either side really for anything. We're not getting reports. We're not getting transparency on what is happening, what is true. Mr. M, thanks for the sub. So it would be nice if somebody came out and said, okay, these are the things that are going on. Here's how many deportations. We don't even have deportation numbers on the White House, officially on the White House deal. Doug, thank you for the sub. So, yes, if we had transparency and we knew, what was going on, it would be super helpful, wouldn't it?
Meeting with people. Nothing unusual about me telling people if you got a problem, my office will try to help you. But these people were liars and fraudsters.
Okay.
The main thing is I'd like you to know is that we're down so many federal prosecutors.
Okay. Spooky H1W says, the kid in the back looks like Trump. Dude, everybody look at the kid on the right in the back. That absolutely does. That is hilarious.
That it has put our ability to hold these people accountable definitely at a loss.
Yes, sir. 8-hour days do get long. In September of 2020.
Well, even Kash Patel, the only time I saw him really say anything about what was going on, he was on Dan Bongino's show. He should be giving daily briefings. All the people that are in this administration should be, posting. Maybe there's stuff on the FBI website. I don't know. Ryan, thanks for the sub. But at least I can tell you from the deportation standpoint, there's no transparency on that. And so there needs to be, again, I'm not taking one side or the other. What's going on? Let the American people know what's happening at the very least.
You issued a press release titled, "For 2 years, Attorney General Ellison's office has held Feeding Our Future accountable." Does that sound familiar?
Eric M. says, breaking news report out of Iran is saying regime is out of money and can no longer pay police and IRGC. Interesting news. I have to follow up on that.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. Let me tell you, the Department of Education.
Does it sound familiar or not, sir?
It certainly does. And
okay.
The Department of Education.
How much did you receive in campaign contributions from individuals charged in the Feeding Our Future case?
Every campaign donation I got was returned to all authorities.
Okay. Everybody knows about the $250 million in fraud for Feeding Our Future case, which was prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota. But there were just 2 other large site sponsors that you settled with instead of prosecuting them. Why did you not prosecute Partners in Quality Care or the Gar Family Services?
Because my office doesn't have jurisdiction to prosecute in those cases.
Well, you allowed them to dissolve, but no one was prosecuted. And PIQC
they still
is
may
accused,
be,
sir, PIQC is accused of $300 million in fraud as significant assets, yet no charges and no attempts to recover taxpayer money. I'll remind y'all, $19 billion. I was a state legislator, and I can remember when our state budget was $19 billion. This is money that's been stolen, and it will not be recovered, and you all are to blame, and every dadgum one of you all ought to step down. Thank you, Mr.
At the very least.
Gentlemen,
be
yield back.
arrested.
Before I recognize Mr. Bell, Mr. Donald, you have a UC?
Yeah, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an op-ed from the Minnesota Star Tribune, authored by Jim Nobles, the former Minnesota legislative auditor, dated December 29th, 2025.
Chet's going to leave now.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair recognizes Mr. Bell from St. Louis.
Thank you, Chair, Ranking Member, and our witnesses for being here
Tom,
today.
that's true.
My Republican colleagues have called this hearing today once
least with
again
the fraud, not
to divert the
flown out,
public's
but with the fraud.
attention from the dangerous threats that they themselves have created for the American people. They have chosen to turn a blind eye to the escalating public safety crisis in Minneapolis, Minnesota, fueled by the deployment of ICE agents under the direction of President Trump. On December 1st, 2025, this administration launched Operation Metro Surge under the false pretense of promoting public safety in Minneapolis. Since then, we have witnessed several deaths, including the brutal killings of Renee Good on January 7th, 2026, and Alex Preddy.
Here we go again. Dennis says there are still COVID funds that haven't been found and recovered. Yeah, there's fraud all over the place. And this is the thing that's so disgusting about it is it's not just this, it's just so many different things where our taxpayer dollars, everything we work our ever-loving asses off for, just gets flushed down the toilet. We don't benefit from any of it. And again, it's on both sides. It's not, everybody's guilty of it. It's either wars to support another country or giving free giveaways to people who don't belong here and they're buying their votes. So that's a true statement.
Only a few short weeks later, on January 24th, news reports state that in 2026 alone, there have already been 8 additional deaths at the hands of federal agents. We are now living in one of the deadliest periods on record, with more deaths carried out by ICE agents in recent years than at any time since 2004.
I'll bet you there's fraud in all 50 states. It just depends on, what programs, how much it is. It's probably varying degrees. I think they were saying, correct me if I'm wrong, California, they're finding California kind of doing the same thing.
This administration's direction, masked agents have inflicted trauma that will remain in these communities and neighborhoods. There's a lack of accountability and justice. Survivor stories have been suppressed. False narratives have been told, and federal officials have refused to cooperate, even going so far as to block state investigators from accessing evidence. A.G. Ellison, as the chief legal officer for the state of Minnesota, what level of cooperation would you expect from the federal government during an investigation of this magnitude?
Congressman, I would expect the kind of cooperation that we're used to experiencing. I mean, in all of the time that I've even been a lawyer, which is now 36 years, state-federal cooperation was exactly how we did business all the time. We are very proud and love working with our FBI agents, DEA agents, ATF agents. It's a regular thing. This is what's strange and unusual.
And has the lack of cooperation and unclear communication from the federal agencies undermined the investigations into the death of Renee Good and Alex Preddy?
It certainly has. We have been denied access to critical evidence in this case that we would need to evaluate this matter.
Bethany, you were mentioning the reinstituting the draft and the draft news. So I don't know. I did not see it, but you were talking about that.
Based on use of force analysis.
Which is befuddling to me because as a former prosecutor, I've led serious and thorough investigations in pursuit of justice. I can say that what we have seen by DHS, DOJ, and the FBI is the complete opposite of a detailed and thorough investigation into the wrongdoing of ICE officials. And let us be clear, despite what President Trump would have the public believe, those agents were...
This is a good question. How do people stand up to the government? What should be the basis of your podcast? Or that should be Well, I think at first having a podcast and discussing these things is the first step. But then also what I've been saying, and you, Paul, you may be, or who was it that said it? Pamela, that instead of taking sides, Democrat or Republican, and treating this as a team sport, that we take our own side. And we take our side as American taxpayers. And by doing so, why can't we raise, how many people in the chat know about Wall Street Bets? Let me know in the chat if you know the GameStop stock and the AME stock, which is the movie theater, where these guys in the Wall Street Bets was a Reddit group. And what they did is they got together and they raised so much money that they started buying GameStop stock to make the price go up because there were a bunch of hedge funds that were naked short selling them. And so what ended up happening is, because these hedge funds were naked short selling, and these guys from Wall Street Bets were bidding the stock up, it put like 2 or 3 hedge funds out of business, billion-dollar hedge funds. And some of these guys had maybe $1,000 worth of stock. Some had $250 worth of stock. They had small amounts. But because there were so many of them, there were like 8 million people that are in this thing, or 4 million people, that when they pooled all their funds together, they literally took on billion-dollar hedge funds to the point where the government got involved, because the hedge funds started calling people in Congress and saying, we can't have this happen. So they shut down Robinhood. They tried to stop the purchasing of GameStop stock. So these kids or guys or women, whoever it was that were involved, couldn't buy it because it was killing these hedge funds. But they ended up winning, and they put like 2 or 3 of them underground. So the point of this is to get everybody to decide, don't pick one side, don't pick the other. They're all on the same team, and they're all funded by multi-billionaires. And you understand that Alex Karp, Palantir, Peter Thiel, I mean, there's so many of them. The Mercer family, people that own Fox News, all of these people have so much money. They're the ones that are controlling the politicians, and the politicians are going to listen to the billionaire. So all of us need to pool our funds together, and so we can fund politicians that are going to represent us, the people. So it's one of those things, and I think more and more people are starting to wake up, and that's exactly why I'm trying to build a community and have as many people in my community that are like-minded, like all of us that are here, that say, okay, let's have it. Thank you for the sub. That we can all get together, pool our funds like Wall Street Bets did, and maybe we can compete with the billionaires.
Remain on the streets of Minnesota. These actions are not isolated incidents. We've seen similar events taking place across the nation in Illinois, North Carolina, and California, to name a few. We have heard directly from survivors about the cruelty and mistreatment they endured by ICE agents, and we have seen the individuals appointed under President Trump to head these operations evade justice and not be held accountable for their actions. We can't stand by and allow this to continue. Those responsible for these actions must be held accountable, and survivors and their families deserve answers and justice. Which is why, Mr. Chair, I move that pursuant to Clause 2, subsection K6 of House Rule 11, the committee shall subpoena Greg Bovino to testify before the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform.
A motion has been made. The committee will hold this motion in abeyance until the end of today's hearing. The committee will now proceed with today's hearing.
I yield the remainder of my time to the ranking member.
But again, the point that, I have to read through the chats again because so many came in while I was talking. But the idea is you have to chip away at it, and you'll have defeatists, and the defeatists will say, You can't vote your way out of this. Well, it's really the only way that you can do it. But if you take Thomas Massie, everybody hates Thomas Massie. Now, I don't agree with everything that Thomas Massie says or does, but Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna passed the law to get the Epstein files released. I don't think there's anybody in this chat right now, at least I certainly hope there isn't, that don't agree that the Epstein files should have been released. But it took literally an act of Congress, and it took two, and it was bipartisan because Ro Khanna's a Democrat and Massey's a Republican. They're the ones who passed the law in order to get those released. So if we can get more politicians elected by us funding them instead of special interest groups and AIPAC and foreign interests, and again, billionaires who have their own interests, obviously. And we're learning a lot of who those people are in the Epstein files, Rothschilds for a long, hundreds of years in that particular case. The power goes long and deep. But if we can raise money as American taxpayers and turn it on its head, and then we can get the people elected through the money that we raise, and then slowly chip away at those elections. Then one of them is James Fishback here in Florida. And so we're going to be interviewing him next month. He's running for Florida governor. He says all the right things. He's running against Byron Donalds, who happens to, I guess he left the chamber or whatever you call it after he was done asking his questions. But this guy is, I'm going to defund all the, he basically says all the things that I think a lot of people who believe in America first believe. And if he gets elected, hopefully will do a good job. But those are the types of people that we, as just the regular Americans, need to be electing in the government, not what the billionaires want.
I'd like just to provide just a few of that time to the Reverend, who wanted to make some additional comments about something that was said earlier in the hearing. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Just following up on Matthew 25, I am so proud of the countless ways that Minnesotans...
Yeah, Donald Trump did not release him. See, that's a misnomer, Lou. He had to sign off on it because it wouldn't have looked very good for him if he didn't sign off on it. But he kept saying there were a hoax. I'm not going to... First it was like, yeah, I'm going to release him, then didn't. But it took Massey and Ro Khanna to pass a law to make the DOJ release them. So he had to sign off of them. But to say that Trump released them, like he did it, that's not the case.
Christians and people of other faiths and moral conscience have stepped forward.
No, just because he signed it doesn't. No, it does matter. It absolutely does matter. It matters because he didn't want them released. He said it was a hoax. So if Massey and Ro Khanna did nothing, nothing would have happened, period. So it does matter.
Come alongside those who are suffering most in this time. There is no greater example of living out the teachings of Christ and caring for the least among us than what we've seen in Minnesota these past few months.
Amen. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Before I recognize Mr. Perry, I have a unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from Alpha News where U.S. Attorney Rosen stated, and I quote, "We have more than adequate staffing to carry out the fraud. We have been reinforced in dramatic numbers by the Department of Justice and by other departments of the federal government." He also said fraud investigations are increasing in pace. Fraud prosecutions, you will see, are going to be dramatically increasing in pace. According to Rosen, if you're committing fraud in the state of Minnesota, it's really not a good time to be doing so. Just wanted to enter that article in the record without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Governor, good to see you again. You're an Army guy. I'm an Army guy. What's, as governor, one of your primary responsibilities? Keep your citizens safe, right? I think we could probably agree on that. We might not agree on much, but we could probably agree on that. And I heard you.
I don't think, Tom, that I think all these people go way back. I mean, these people were all, even Trump was a Democrat back then. I mean, he was hanging out with all these people. He was friends with all of them. So, was he, I mean, some people would disagree and say that, he's not guilty. He didn't do anything wrong. But there are things in there, if you read the files, there are things in there that people testified, or not testified, but gave statements on that don't look good. But yeah, they could have been released during the Biden administration. But I think overall there were a lot of people, especially billionaires, that were, and then also royalty. This goes all over the world that people were involved in. So of course they were kicking the can down the road as long as they possibly could, and they kept saying, well, it's under investigation. It's under investigation. So because it's under investigation, they didn't have to release the files because there was a continuing investigation going on. But nobody in these things looked good. And all of a sudden, these files are starting to disappear. And the whole number of files and the files themselves are starting to shrink. Not as many people are able to find as many of the files that were originally released. And you can file Ian Carroll. Ian Carroll knows this stuff upside down and backwards. He created an AI system that pulls all this stuff. So he knows there are a lot of people out there that really know these files very, very well and deeply.
Talk earlier about working with federal partners. There's a lot been discussed.
You're right, Josh. All friends. I forgot to mention that. That was the point I was trying to get, but you're correct. He's protecting his friends because all these people knew each other. So that was also a main reason why. So, he even said, I don't like the fact that Bill Clinton, my buddy or my friend, is having to be deposed and this and that. They're all friends. They all know each other. They're all friends, and they're all protecting each other. That's why I've been saying they're on one team and the rest of us are on another. And they want us fighting with each other. They want us going Republican and Democrat, because when we're all going like this at each other, we're not paying attention to them and the billionaires that are running them. So at some point, you either have to wake up or just, go sit on the sidelines, because I've been doing this for a long time. Some of you, a lot of you are just finding out about me now. But, this stuff is way more complicated. And, people say they see the surface stuff and they're like, oh, I've got it figured out. Now, you can go, there's layers and layers deep. I don't have it all figured out, but there's a lot more going on than what everybody's being led to believe, by a lot. And, I encourage you to subscribe and get into the spaces that I get into on X. You really want to get into the weeds and figure out what the hell is going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in X, on Spaces. Let me know in the chat if you guys know about X Spaces and what goes on there. Because X Spaces, you get a lot of people that know a lot of stuff, like, the deep, dark stuff about, the Epstein files and those types of things.
Hear about fraud of various kinds, but I want to talk about something that seems to me, quite honestly, a dereliction of duty,
Yeah,
or
Dennis,
certainly
that's right.
a huge lapse in judgment. And you were governor in October of 2023, right? Just want to make sure
Josh,
it's correct, on the same page here. And you signed the Minnesota Driver's Licenses for All Act. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
A lot of this stuff, the Hunter Biden's thing disappears. All this stuff gets, noted. So many things get memory hold because there's so much stuff that's going on. And it's like you have to write it all down in order to keep track of it, because there's all the Anthony Weiner's deal. Let me know in the chat if you know, what happened with the Anthony Weiner laptop. Apparently there was so much stuff on that it made NYPD cops, like, there were a lot that, were unalive because of it, so there's a lot of stuff that, gets a memory hold and people forget about. And I know that's what's happening here with the Epstein files. And that's why it's so important not to stop. This is probably one of the most important things, I think, in world history, in my opinion, because it goes so far back to the Rothschilds, to the Trilateral Commission, Bohemian Grove, all these different things. 56 Morningstar, thank you for the sub. So, a lot of these things, some of you may or may not know and get into. But yeah, a lot of there's just, like I said, there's a lot of layers to the onion.
Right? So, now, look, I'm not going to hold you to knowing every single thing in these laws. There's a lot of paragraphs and wording and so on and so forth. But
Dennis,
under your law that you signed, it prohibits the disclosure of information contained in the license or identification card applications for enforcing.
Yeah, and I was saying, I'm sorry for pausing all the time, but there's so many chats coming in that are worth talking about. But Eric, yeah, Bill Clinton is a charming dude, and that's what he does. He comes in and he's like, hey everybody, he tries to make friends out of everybody because he wants to disarm you. Because he knows if he Hillary Clinton's the total opposite. She'll just come at you and attack you, so you avoid the confrontation. But Bill Clinton, he'll disarm you with his charming, and the memory of that guy has been well known for many, many years, and he'll remember everybody in the room that he meets. But he couldn't remember anything when it came to the Epstein files. And when he was hanging out with Epstein on his plane, the 17 times at the White House, all the different things, who was on the plane and who wasn't on the plane, but he could remember all the other things. Same with Leslie Wexner. And go back, if you haven't watched those videos, go to my lives and watch those live streams where we go over and react to the Leslie Wexner, the Hillary Clinton, and the Bill Clinton depositions. They're really super interesting. And last night, we did the interview with Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein. That, you have to go and watch that. So when we end tonight, go back and look at that and watch that live stream, that recorded live stream from yesterday with Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein. It will blow your mind. It is crazy. Thank you, Seven. Thank you for the sub.
Title 8 of the United States Code, just to make sure, are you familiar with what Title 8 deals with?
I'm not specifically.
Okay, so it deals with immigration, nationality, and aliens. Particularly, the law that you signed eliminates the requirement for Social Security numbers or proof of lawful presence. And furthermore, it's a violation under Section 14.4 of your code for anybody to research that. As a matter of fact, immigration status is classified as private under Section 13.18. So literally, the federal government, your partner, as you said, we work with our federal partners, can't use that driver's license information regarding people that are here illegally. Now,
I don't understand the connection between the driver's license and the immigration piece, I guess.
well, they can't because, well, let me make the connection for you. According to the Secretary of Transportation, 1/3 of Minnesota's non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses were issued illegally. Do you have a video ready to
All
play
right, let's
for
get
me?
to 300 likes.
Can you play it now? This is what
You're
happens.
probably getting sick of me saying this,
Mr.
but
Governor,
let's do it.
This is what happens when you issue driver's licenses to people illegally.
He is on the northbound lanes of 61, going the wrong way.
This is crazy.
I'm
Everybody,
going
did anybody
southbound
see
on
this?
61. He's in the northbound lanes on Highway 61.
So this guy, I don't know if any of you remember the Indian driver who didn't speak English that had a commercial driver's license in California that just decided to do a U-turn on a major highway. And when he did that, people drove under it and were killed. This is another one where another driver's license, a CDL driver's license, was issued in Minnesota. This guy was literally driving on a freeway in the wrong direction.
Crossing over there. And thank God, I don't know how much that thing weighs, 60, 80,000 pounds, 60 miles an hour.
18-wheeler.
You can cut the video. He was licensed in your state under a law that you signed that precludes federal officials, your federal partners, as you call them, from determining whether they're here illegally. That guy that was driving that truck couldn't pass the test. He didn't pass the test out on the road. There's another video, I'm not going to play it, but there's another video of a guy
ridiculous.
here illegally turning a truck like that around in the middle of a highway
Yeah, Lisa,
where
no
people
real
lost their lives
consequences.
because
That's
they
right.
were decapitated when they went underneath it. That's what happened. So my question for you is, this should be easy.
Yep.
What are you going to do to rectify the law that you signed that allows people here illegally to get a CDL? That tape was in Missouri, not in your state. Look, if you don't want to protect the people in your state, I guess that's your business and the business of your voters. But that driver was driving in Missouri. And if he'd have hit a bunch of people, quite honestly, to me, you could have been held liable.
Yeah. Well, Congressman, first of all, Minnesota ranks in the top 3 safest states by highway data from your own department.
Highway data.
The data from the Department of Transportation
Yeah, right.
for highway safety. We have the 3rd. We want everybody on our roads to be licensed.
So are you saying based on that you're okay?
I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with you or I speeding. I'm not okay with DUIs.
But you signed this.
Look, so notice how he goes to a different subject, not about the fact that they're issuing driver's licenses to commercial driver's licenses, driving a tractor trailer that could kill dozens of people on the road. He goes, well, I'm not okay with people that are speeding, or I'm not okay with people breaking this law, that law. Completely going around the entire subject of an illegal immigrant having a CDL.
Law that allows for that.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking
and you're
for.
going to do
Dennis.
nothing about it?
I can't speak to the specific on the CDO. What I can tell you is
I can. I referenced your law. It says House of Representatives, State of Minnesota. And I know there's a lot of words here.
Case. I
but
just know our roads are
referenced
safer.
exactly the sections that.
Yeah, Stu, I was already talking about that a long time ago. Where have you been? Yeah, like we already talked about all that. So like when did you get here?
Allow for this to happen and preclude federal
You're already
enforcement
assuming like what was
regarding
already discussed
immigration
on
and
this.
the illegality of people receiving CDLs under
Like
your
how
state
people, I
drivers.
love how people come in here and automatically assume that we haven't discussed any of that stuff. We've been like, can you look at the time? It's been 3 hours and 3 minutes. 3 hours and 3 minutes that we've been discussing, and you come in here and say, dude, you're bringing up shit that don't mean nothing. I'm glad that you also have a solid grasp of the King's English on top of it all.
Safety and immigration are two separate things. Anybody, had that been a citizen or not, it's still tragic, it's wrong, we shouldn't do it. What I'm telling you is in Minnesota, we have the third safest roads in the country.
So you're good. So you're good with this practice.
I'm not good with that.
Well, what are you good with? Because that's what's happening under your law.
Well, I can't speak to the specific on if it's an outlier. We give license to people who then eventually... People get DUIs after we issue them.
That happened last month. This is March. That happened a week and a half ago.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are you familiar?
That's wrong. And look,
but you're not going to do anything.
Sure, we're going to do things.
What are you going to do?
Traffic laws against them.
What are we going to do?
Was this person arrested?
I sure
How
hope
do you
so.
not know
That's
that?
good. And but he was licensed in your state under your law that you signed about a year and a half ago.
Every day we give licenses and people speed. So we ticket them and try and stop that. What I'm telling you is I don't understand the connection between
He's here illegally. He can't read, and he got a license under your provisions, and he's driving all across the country, imperiling everybody else. That's the connection.
I can't speak.
Thank you.
The data shows Minnesota is one of the safest driving states in the country. I don't know what to tell you.
Other states driving
I don't know.
Bye, Stu. Just leave, dude.
Chair now recognize Mr. Min from California.
You're too slow to be in here.
Oh, you're next. Okay.
Is that okay, sir?
I didn't have it on the list, but.
Oh, I should.
I will yield
You
to
watch
the
somebody drooling in a
ranking
cup
member.
or something, just swipe up, you'll find somebody barfing in a cup next.
I
You'll
was
watch
tardy.
them.
I thank you, Mr. Min. I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, and thank you, witnesses, for coming today. So, what I've heard so far is feeding our future, $250 million stolen.
You see what I mean, though, too, is like when you have, we went for a while before having somebody come in and do that, but they make it, what do they automatically make it about? One side or the other, instead of saying, you know, this is bad, you know, have we talked about this yet or anything like that? Just come barreling in, you know, like a bull in the china shop, assuming that we all have talked about or didn't talk about certain subjects, and then calls everybody and just starts insulting everyone. And you know, these are the types of people who are, you know, honestly are, you know, pretty much cast away from society. The only way that they can even interact with anyone is to come into a space like this anyway. But these are the things that I'm talking about, is where you can't make it about one side or the other. You have to talk about the subjects
50
themselves.
convictions secured. The prosecution was working. Then the administration froze $10 billion in child care across 5 states. No evidence, no legal authority,
Right,
no
Dennis,
statutory process. A federal court ruled it unlawful and unconstitutional within 48 hours. Thank you, Attorney General Ellison and Attorney General Bonta, for that work.
Bye, Stu.
Then the lead prosecutor resigned. His team followed. Those prosecutions are now at risk. So the record shows they froze $10 billion illegally, lost in court immediately, and dismantled the prosecution, actually putting fraudsters in prison. Every single action made the fraud worse. This isn't incompetence, because incompetence is random. This was targeted, legally defective, and prosecutorially catastrophic. If this committee was serious about fraud, the first witness should have been the IRS official who
what?
sent the letter, not the Attorney General who beat them in court. Attorney General Ellison, what are we doing here? And I want actually to ask you,
Man, look
what
at this.
is your office doing
Jeez.
systemically to prosecute fraud in the state?
Wow.
Well, thank you for the question, Congresswoman. As I said, prosecuting Medicaid fraud is a very important work that we do. We do it every single day. We've secured millions of dollars for people. We've gotten millions in restitution. We've convicted people and held them accountable. We also represent state agencies and help those agencies support the work that they do. The fact of
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is. I've gone way over what I was going to do tonight. But those of you that are here, don't leave yet until you subscribe. So I am going to. We can continue if you guys want us to continue. I can continue this, or we can get it. I'll get into some other things as well. But yeah, we can continue with this. Thanks, Dennis, and everybody. Just make sure you subscribe on your way out. Click the like button on the way out. And we will be on again tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And I appreciate all of you hanging out with me. This was a lot of fun and definitely interesting. This is a long one. I think it's like 6 hours. But again, thanks for the super chats. Thanks for the subs. Thanks for hanging out. And we will see you all tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern for more fun. Take it easy. Have a great rest of your night.